Hello and welcome to the 2020 Santos Women's Tour Down Under, where Amanda Spratt lines up wearing the colours as the Australian national champion and with number 1 on her back as she aims for her 4th win in a row in this event, the 5th edition of the event. I'm Matthew Keenan, joined by former points race world champion Kate Bates and former world hour record holder Brody O'Donnell. Kate, the race is on. They're heading towards the top of the first climb of the day, and it's the Subaru Queen of the Mountains. We have one rider with a breakaway advantage of just on 1 minute. The peloton, this is the first key moment of the race.
Well, they're fairly mild conditions out there, and we thought it might be quite an aggressive start to the race. Given that, it wasn't so much actually, but Marika van Witsenberg from Dolcini Van Eyck Sport, well, she's taken the opportunity. She attacked after the first sprint. Quite a brave move. It was only about 8k into the 116k they're racing today. She's out there solo and she looks to be labouring a bit. Honestly, I think she's pretty brave to go out solo with so many k left to go. And at this stage, she might be looking over her shoulder and hoping someone joins her.
Ryder, we have seen that a few times. She has taken a look across the shoulder, hoping that she can lure somebody out. But I get the distinct impression that the big favourites, such as Amanda Spratt, Ruth Winder as well, the current American national champion, they're waiting to test their legs on this climb.
This is the first difficult climb we'll see of the stage, obviously, and while the average is, I think, only around 2.9%, there is a pitch of it that's around 12%, so it's definitely going to split things apart. That said, it's not very hot today. It's only around 18 degrees, so the riders won't be suffering the way we've seen them in the past.
She looks like she's suffering a bit out there. Brody, long breakaways are so tough when you're on your own. I mean, she's looking over thinking somebody might join her, but the big teams, they know how difficult it is for one rider to survive. So on one hand, you might look at the racing and think, are the main peloton going to chase across and really have to work? I think it's quite the opposite. I think Van Witsenberg will struggle. She'll start to slow down, and quite naturally she might kind of drift back.
The other upside, though, is if she gets caught by some of the better climbers up over the top, she can then work with those 4 or 5 or 6 women. So she's put herself into a better position, and maybe even to help out a rider that we are less aware of who might be targeting some of those intermediate sprints. So sometimes it can be opportunistic and less about being out on her own for sort of 95 to 100 kilometres.
What I like about the move, Kate, is that the team, the Dolcini Van Eyck Sport team, it's an international team, but it's not one of the big teams. And they don't have a real favourite for the stage, nor a favourite for the general classification. So they're at least making a mark and getting themselves into the race. And they'll wait to see what eventuates further down the road as we approach 1 kilometre to go to the top of the first of the Subaru Queen of the Mountains.
It's not a long climb, and on average it's only about 3%, but it does go up to 12%, which is, you know, a good leg biter. The old 12%, that'll hurt. It gives her a good opportunity to get over that climb with a bit of clearance and to ride up without, you know, spending too much energy. The peloton won't be able to do that. They will have to put everything into making sure gaps don't open up and the climbers zoom up there.
It's 48 kilometres into the stage, 68 kilometres remaining on the stage. Do you expect to see any of the teams such as the Trek Segafredo team or the Michelson Scott team try and put the likes of Chloe Hosking under a little bit of pressure? Perhaps too far from the finish to actually drop her before the finish line, but just to test the legs and perhaps blunten the sprint a little.
I honestly think that, you know, all of the teams are gearing up today for what they consider a sprint stage, and that really does bias the tactics they use. On the course, it is unlikely that a break of climbers would be able to stay away, even if they did open up a gap over the hill. So I think it's more likely that they put a little bit of pressure on, simply because when you're a climber, your natural climbing speed is quite a lot faster than a sprinter's natural climbing speed, and that's what's more comfortable for you in the moment. So less of an attack and more of a just getting over it comfortably without spending too much energy. I think it would be a waste of resources to go too hard over there, because I think it would come back together.
The other value this kind of stage adds is, for a lot of these riders, they're just checking each other out. International riders have come together, so with 200 metres now to go till the QOM points, we're still waiting on an actual time gap.
Well, Van Witsenberg, she's in with a big chance to collect maximum points here. This is classified as a Category 2 climb. The first 6 riders over the top collect points in the race for the Subaru Queen of the Mountains. It's 15 points for the win over the top of this climb. And with just 1 Queen of the Mountains point on the stage. At the very least, Van Witzenberg is getting herself a spot on the podium. This is a smart ride by the Dutch woman. She doesn't have a huge CV in terms of wins throughout her career, but the 35-year-old is making her mark at the start of season 2020, and she's getting it off to the perfect start. She crests the top of the first Subaru Queen of the Mountains points. Category 2, she collects 15 points. She'll be wearing polka dots tomorrow, and understandably so, she is delighted with the outcome.
Great outcome for the team, and now their jersey's been on television. You know, she's going to be in the QOM jersey at the end of the stage, which is a fantastic result for day one, and she looks incredibly satisfied. So good for her and being so aggressive.
I really like that reaction. She probably figures, as their team would also realise, they don't have a big favourite for the stage, so let's come away with a prize of some description.
Well, we criticise, if that's the word we can use, her early move, knowing how tough it was to stay out there, but good opportunity to take the lead, and the peloton is certainly taking this QOM very seriously.
This looks like the colours of the Canyon SRAM team. Perhaps it's Jessica Pratt towards the front trying to collect some points. Also Justine Barrow, but from the LA team, just sneaking across the top of the climb in its second position. Trying to get a closer look to get confirmation on that rider that has gone across the top.
43, Anastasia Krusina.
It is Krusina that's gone across the top in second position, but there is no doubt that Van Witzenberg will be the leader of the Subaru Queen of the Mountains classification. What happens to her legs now?
Boom. I think, she's achieved something pretty remarkable. She'll be standing on the podium today of a Pro Series race. Good on her. She's a winner already. I think that she'll probably drift back to the peloton now, feeling quite pleased with herself, and just try and get to the finish.
Ziptrack stage 1. Let's take a look at the course. In the Adelaide Hills, it's an easy trip from the centre of Adelaide to get out to Hahndorf for the start of the stage, eventually making its way through to Macclesfield. It is 116.3 kilometres. Echunga is hosting all 3 of the intermediate sprints. The first one has already been, that was after just 8 kilometres. More on that in just a moment. They then make their way through Macclesfield for the first time, but not through the actual finish line, so they don't get a dress rehearsal. They only go through that on the final passage. Then into Meadows. They then make their way off to Kaitpo, where they've just had the Subaru Queen of the Mountains point, and we've already seen the winner of that for the first in the battle for the polka dot jersey. They then make the journey further back towards Meadows, and it's into the San Remo feed zone before heading on the finishing loop around Macclesfield, where they go through the finish line 2 more times into Echunga for the intermediate sprints. And Kate, they'll be important, the intermediate sprints, because there are time bonuses there. 3 seconds for the win, 2 and 1 for the minor placings. Also the time bonuses at the end of the stage, 10 seconds for the stage win, 6 and 4 for the minor placings.
Well, last year's race, the podium was actually decided on intermediate sprint points in that final criterium, and we had climbers Rachel Nayland taking sprint points. So they are actually very important, and it goes a long way to show the tactics of the team and what they're interested in. Without a major climb in this year's 4-day course, I think the intermediate sprints will play a much larger role.
On paper, Brody, this is a day that does suit the sprinters. There's a few days that suit the sprinters this year, the first stage and the last stage. The race director, Kim Conti, has designed a course that opens it up a lot more. As Kate Bates has just said, there's no definitive, this is the stage with the key moment.
She said you used to be able to look at the stages historically and say, oh, it'll probably be down to 1 of 3 riders, someone like Spratt. But now it's open to 12 or possibly 15. And so that also is a fantastic outcome for a lot of these lesser-known teams, for the New Zealand national team, for some of our National Road Series teams. You can see here the back of the jersey here of Rock Salt Attacker, a team that have performed very well in National Road Series in Australia. Similarly with the Specialised Women's Racing there, number 144. They've got a team of 6 riders who've had a great summer here in Australia. So we're really looking to see how some of those riders can be opportunistic. A rider like Ruby Rosen-Gannon, for example, who's riding in the national team, has had a fantastic off-season.
Let's take a look at what has happened in the race so far. It got underway in Hahndorf, which has hosted a lot of stages throughout the history of the Tour Down Under. And all the national champions, Kate, getting called to the front. Ruth Winder there in the Stars and Stripes. Amanda Spratt once again in the green and gold colours. The flag came in. I expected more action right at the very beginning, but it took a while for the first attack to go.
Well, in mild conditions, we thought maybe the athletes would get enthusiastic early on, a mild start. But a mechanical, a lot of the riders have to watch out for this. And the New Zealand rider getting a rear flat, that was changed. She got back into the peloton, but straight into the intermediate sprint.
In the intermediate sprint, it was Gracie Alban for the Mitchelton Scott team who collected the maximum points and also the maximum time bonus. Worth noting the red colours, Lee Kirschman was in second place. She's one of the contenders for the overall classification. And Lotte Hentala, formerly Lotte Lepisto, was in third place. A familiar name when it comes to sprint finishes. And then we saw the attack by Marika van Witsenberg. Quick look over the shoulder, Brody. She wanted some company, but she couldn't find it. But importantly for her, not getting any company ensured that she is now the leader in the Subaru Queen of the Mountains classification.
Well, she's done her 40-kilometre individual time trial today, and she's going to come away with a jersey thanks to Subaru, and you can see how pumped she is to get that result. So fantastic for her team, and it's interesting to see now how the impact of that climb will have on some of these hitters that are really looking into now the second intermediate sprint coming into Echunga.
Kate, I loved that reaction as she went over the top of the Subaru Queen of the Mountains point.
Well, you know, I think what's really important is that the athletes have a lot of purpose out there, because that's what produces interesting racing. When nobody really, has the passion for the race, then, well, that would be pretty boring for everybody, including the athletes, right? But the shot that we saw before, at the back end of the peloton, for us, we're looking at the front and we say, oh, it's a fairly modest start, they're not doing too bad. But those riders at the back, they were actually working quite hard. I think there's more wind than we can really see, because there does look to be a lot of protection. But the riders, I think, are labouring a bit more than is even visible. That just eats away. You know, they've got a race within a race, 3 intermediate sprints and a QOM. All of those little efforts, it's like doing intervals. So they're not just rolling to the finish for a sprint at all.
And the next of the intermediate sprints, that's just on around about 17 kilometres away. Van Witsenberg has now been caught by the peloton. So she'll be back in the peloton, and no doubt she'll have a few teammates around her patting her on the back. But one of them won't be, because this is another attack by the Dolcini Van Eyck Sport team. They've got a clear strategy. Let's come to Australia and let's have a big impact.
We know that the Dutch are famous for really aggressive racing. It's one of the great characteristics. A lot of these young women start riding much younger than a lot of Aussie women do, and New Zealand women. And they're here for a purpose, absolutely. And I'm sure their director has just said to them, get out there, be aggressive, do whatever you can. Hopefully there will be some other riders that will join you in these breaks. But she would have been boosted by the confidence of her of her teammate just 15 minutes ago.
This is the 5th edition of the Santos Women's Tour Down Under. We've had one breakaway so far, and it's been Marika van Witsenberg who's collected the maximum points in the Subaru Queen of the Mountains. This is now her teammate, Nicole Hanselman, a Swiss rider from that team, and their strategy is really obvious. Make this race as hard as we can and try and break away solo and win.
Great to see now she's being joined by, looks like a B-Pink rider. It could be Silvia Valsecchi, who was the sort of captain of that team. I raced with her in 2011. She's been racing a really long time, but is actually a really great track specialist, an endurance rider and a team pursuit rider.
This is causing a bigger reaction from the rest of the peloton as well, Kate. We're getting down towards that 60 kilometre to go mark. It's the next phase of the race.
Well, let's not say it's a business end. We're kind of at the halfway mark. Dolcini Van Eyck, they have a great strategy to be aggressive, but one at a time is not necessarily the most strategic move. So they do need to get some other teams interested in forming that breakaway. Any breakaway won't just do it. It needs to be a combination of riders who want to work together and a combination of teams who have the interest to do so. So if we got a Mitchelton Scott rider sitting in a bunch off the front, I don't think they'd have any impetus to work at all.
Well, 2 of the riders are the favourites for the stage are Chloe Hosking and Amanda Spratt. Let's hear from them now.
Yeah, the course this year is really exciting. It's really cool that they've opened the races up, so it's going to be more dynamic, and it's not so specific with the hilltop finish, so more riders will have the opportunity to win, which I think is really exciting both for the peloton and for the spectators. And I think it's more suited to women's cycling because we do need to be more versatile riders. So there's less spots in the peloton get on teams, so you have to be more well-rounded. and I think that'll make for really exciting racing.
There's no big mountaintop finish, or there's no one point where you say this is where it's definitely going to be won. So there are more contenders, I think, this year. We have a strong team as well, so I think numbers will be important. Everyone saw how strong Grace Brown was as well on Sunday in the road race. So I think it's going to be about taking opportunities and making it hard where we can.
The key point coming out from both of them, Chloe Hosking, the first that you heard from, Amanda Spratt, the second one, who's won the Santos Women's Tour Down Under 3 times already, is that there's no definitive point. Where do you make your move?
Last year, the climb at the finish of stage 3 really made the race, and all of the riders were essentially just waiting for that. We saw almost a bit of negative racing early on because everybody knew that the climb would rip them apart, and it kind of didn't matter. That neutralised any of the other moves earlier in the race. This year it is so different, and I think that we have the opportunity to see some breakaways, especially on stage 2 and stage 3 into Stirling, to really mix it up, because the teams will not want to just let the sprinters walk away with it. We know stage 1 is suited to the sprinters, stage 4 more of a criterium for the sprinters as well. You don't just want to deliver the victory to Chloe Hosking like that. So, I think it'll be more dynamic and exciting for that.
Brody, the orange colours of the rally team coming towards the front. 3 of the support riders for Chloe Hosking, still with 61 kilometres remaining, coming towards the front of the peloton. She is a favourite for today's stage. I think she can actually win the Tour overall.
And she thinks so too. And what I love about her attitude at the moment is she's gone from racing in European teams for a really long time. She started her professional career in 2010. So she's at her 10-year anniversary, and she's had some pretty incredible highlights. But now she's taking on a leadership role for a US-based team that will still race in Europe. But they're there to support and protect her, but also she's there to guide and lead them. And no better than the course winner and a Commonwealth Games winner to be your team captain. So that would give them some confidence.
You can see the American national champion down there, number 35 from Trek Segafredo, Ruth Winder. She's been good here in the past, Kate, and she's come here motivated and is clearly a contender for the overall classification.
It can be quite tough for the Americans and the Europeans. It's winter over there, and they're unable to get out and do the long rides in the same way the Australians do. But that's where a lot of this new technology comes into boosting their training. Things, Brody, like Zwift, it really enhances their ability to do indoor training and get the same physiological results as the Australians are getting. And in some ways, they're doing it under far more controlled conditions. They're not out in the heat and in the wind. And so I think it might take a few days and a few stages for the Euros and the Americans and for Ruth Winder to find her legs. But she's fit, she's motivated, and she comes here with a very strong team. I think it's really exciting for the Santos Women's Tour Down Under to have such high calibre riders turning up, and not just turning up to be part of the number, but turning up fit and ready to go.
It is. Well, let's now hear from some of the riders and their thoughts about today's opening stage of the Santos Women's Tour Down Under.
Yeah, I think stage 1 of Tour Down Under, everyone's excited, everyone's fresh. We think it will be a bunch sprint. I know there's sort of a technical descent down into the finish line, but aside from that, the major challenges in terms of altitude meters lie in the other stages, so we expect it to be a bunch kick there.
With stage 1, I've heard that it's more of a sprinter stage, but it doesn't lack climbs, so there's still opportunity for breakaways to go, but it's likely we'll finish in a sprint, and there's also a few bonus sprints along the way, which could be important for the NGC.
Stage 1 starts in Hahndorf, and I'm really interested in this stage because it should come to a bunch sprint, and if it doesn't, maybe a more select group with the fast technical finish lead into the finish. And there's a number of intermediate sprints throughout the stage as well. I actually think that these intermediate sprints will play a big role in the overall of the tour, so I think you'll see a variety of different riders going for that. And look, if I could win the stage and a few of the intermediate sprints, I put myself in a nice position to take the leader's jersey into the second stage, and that would be pretty special.
So stage 1, I think it's definitely going to be not an easy bike race. If it's windy, it can get quite exposed out there, so potentially some crosswinds in the middle third of the race. But with this downhill finish, I definitely think it can be one for the sprinters.
The second rider that we heard from was Lee Kirschman from the Sunweb team, the Canadian, and I like that she spoke about the intermediate sprints. And we've already seen after 8 kilometres today, she finished second in the intermediate sprint. She's here thinking about a long-term strategy, 4 stages worth of racing, picking up points along the way, picking up those time bonuses. She is a contender.
It also really highlights that riders have to be paying attention. There's no resting, hiding in a bunch for an hour. You need to be monitoring what's going on, which riders are moving around the peloton. So that's definitely going to be an advantage to the experienced riders.
Amanda Spratt, number 1 in the Australian Champions colours. You know her well, Kate, and she's grown up racing BMX. She's raced on the track at World Championship level. She can deal with any circumstances.
Oh, she's such a dynamic rider, and she just loves racing in Adelaide. She loves racing in front of a home crowd. She's so motivated and she's so passionate to bring the sport to the people. So this means a lot to her, this race. It's not just about pulling on the ochre jersey at the end. It's also about giving back to the community that has given her so much through her long career.
I'm interested to see up on the left-hand side of your screen there, the Specialised Women's Racing jersey looks very similar to Astana, but we've seen Specialised very prominently at the front. They've got a great sprinter in Matilda Reynolds, who's performed well domestically, and some younger riders riding in support of her, including Jamie Gunning, who won the Under-23 National Championships on Sunday in Ballarat. So there are, again, some really great domestic performers like Peter Mullins as well here up on the left-hand side of your screen.
I do find it quite interesting, this shot, to see on the left we can see the red stripe of the Sunweb team. They are en masse bringing Leah Kirschman to the front leading into this next intermediate sprint. In the middle of the bunch we can see the Mitchelton Scott riders all grouping together as well, and it's very important that their team rallies around, supports them, keeps them out of the wind and puts them in the best position to get sprint points without spending too much energy.
Stage 1 of the Women's Santos Tour Down Under. The peloton is all together, 12 kilometres away from the second of the Ziptrack intermediate sprints. They're racing through the picturesque Adelaide Hills, which is a beautiful place to ride and a beautiful place to visit.
It was really fun. I honestly didn't know what to expect because I've never been to Worm Adelaide's. I would say make sure you have a lot of time to hang around because there's so many things that you can discover that you've never heard of. So I think it's just just have time, be open and walk around because you'll see a lot of things you've never seen before, and that's what's great about Worm Adelaide, yeah.
So far so good, loving it. It's a great mix of people. Very eclectic music from all around the world. Love it.
It's the stuff that you don't know that's there, and that's what makes it different.
Ziptrack, stage 1 of the Santos Tour Down Under, the Women's Santos Tour Down Under, as they make their way into the San Remo pasta feed zone. And with just over 50 kilometres to go, 57 kilometres to go, it's an important time of the race to refuel both food and to hydrate, even though it's cooler than what we're accustomed to in this race.
Well, just in case anybody at home is playing along and thinking maybe they're grabbing a bag of pasta in the San Remo feed zone, they're more likely just to be getting water bottles with, you know, an isotonic drink in them to keep them hydrated, and maybe a little snack to go in their back pocket, a gel, some banana, a rice cake, or something like that. It's really important to keep hydrated and to keep eating quite consistently when they're out on their bike. Every 45 minutes they need to be eating, every 20 minutes they need to be drinking. They simply can't start with enough on their bike. So you'll see the Sunweb athletes have their feed bag, a musette if you will, fancy words we use in cycling, and that is full of water bottles, some food, and when she finishes she'll either put it in a back pocket, take it back to the car, because I think it's worth mentioning, Matt, cycling's going to a really big effort to reduce the waste and the impact they have on the local community and the roads in which they race through. So the riders aren't allowed to just dispose of water bottles or gels on the side of the road. They have a zone they're allowed to do it. Otherwise they will get fined. They have to pop it in their pocket or take it back to the team car, and I think that's a really great thing.
I love that initiative because cycling is the green mode of transport, so let's be green when we're racing bikes as well. Brody, from a medical perspective, Dr. Brody O'Donnell, this is a simple old cliche, but you don't need a medical degree to get your head around it. If you're hungry, it's too late. If you're thirsty, it's too late. It's really simple, but it's right.
Absolutely, and the best professional riders are doing that even when they're not thinking about what's happening. They're automatically, as you said, Kate, taking times or kilometres to remind themselves to eat and drink. And this is a 4-day race, so it's not about just being good for today or being good for the next hour. You need to be recovered and eating well throughout the next 4 days to ensure you're healthy and strong.
Kate, did you have simple rules and disciplines to make sure that you did eat and drink enough?
Well, when I first started racing tours, I was absolutely rubbish because I kind of forgot that each day has a big impact on the next. So I really viewed it, I was a bit of a sprinter and a trackie. So I viewed road tours as 1 day at a time, which was a bit detrimental on about day 3 or 4. So I made it very simple for myself. Every 20 minutes to take a sip of water or whatever was in my bottle, and every 45 minutes to eat. So one of my elder statesmen in my team, who's now the team director for Trek Segafredo, Ina Yoko Teutenberg, she told me 10 gels. And 10 gels, I thought, my goodness me, how do you even eat 10 gels? And she said, trust me, 10 gels, you know, or the equivalent, whatever it is that you're choosing to eat, you pretty much need to eat constantly.
We've seen Lisa Jacobs, though, 3-time cyclocross national champion, have some really interesting stories about it. When you overload your gut too much, when you eat too much and your stomach can't absorb it, you can actually feel unwell, and it also impacts then your ability to get blood supply to your legs. So there's this narrow band there of perfect eating and drinking that you need to be careful about. It takes a bit of practice.
You need to train it too, right? You can't just turn up to a race with 10 gels in your pocket and think your gut can handle it. And you can't starve yourself through training to get lean for the race. I mean, it's quite a complicated puzzle.
Lisa, it sounds like my Christmas with Lisa Jacobs. I had too much and my stomach was uncomfortable as well.
You just lie down on the floor, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Christmas is not a high-performance event, though.
Oh, it was high-performance.
In the Keenan
No
house.
Pro Series.
Hey, I'm one of 7 kids, Kate. So the dinner table, with about 17 grandkids around the dinner table as well, is a high-performance event to make sure you get food on your plate.
That's a lot of roast potatoes.
That's a lot
Speaking of, do you know how good roast potatoes are in your back pocket to race? Brilliant. Salty roast potatoes at Team T-Mobile. They used to do it for the celiacs because a lot of the food back then, the bars weren't gluten-free, and so they would bake up the potatoes, slather them in salt, pop them in some foil, and Bob's your uncle.
Well, I'm having roast potatoes tonight. I'm wondering what the former world champion, the 2009 world champion, Tatiana Gudurzo, thinks of the roast potatoes. She's somebody that loves coming to Australia. She's an Italian former world champion. Let's hear from her now.
The people here is so friendly. Oh, Italia, ciao! I not understand why the people know. Ciao Italia, ciao bella, I love pizza, mi amo pizza. Bellissimo.
I raced with Tatiana in a team with her in 2010. She was an extraordinary. She was wearing the World Champions jersey, and she would ride up beside me if I was on the front preparing to lead out our sprint, and she'd say, "Bravo, Brady, bravo."
Brady. I
Forza,
like that. Brady.
Forza Brady.
Can we call you Brady from
No,
now on?
not
Okay.
at all.
This is a more serious looking move, and once again we're seeing going off the front Valsecchi for the B Pink team, and also in this move at number 43, that is Gersina, who was the winner of the sprint for second place at the Queen of the Mountains point before, and Janelle Crooks, the Australian, on the Tipco American team. This is a quality little move.
Janelle Crooks is a really exciting bike rider. She rode for Mitchelton Scott in the past, and then she took a bit of time off road. The NRS cruised around Brisbane where she lives, but she was motivated, she was fit, and she got an opportunity to go back into the Pro Series. I think she'll have a real impact. She's got a really, really good attitude. She's pretty relaxed about it all, and that will serve her very well.
We've seen in another sport, in tennis, with Ash Barty, she took a break from tennis. She went and played cricket for a little while, and she came back, and now she's world number 1. That break at a young age, and she's still relatively young. She's 25, Janelle Crooks, or thereabouts. Her best years are definitely still in front of her. It might be the best thing that she's ever going to do in her career, is that break, freshen up, come back, and she's hungry.
Well, you need to be there for the right reasons, and you know, we ask the athletes quite often how much of it is physical and how much of it is mental. To be honest, these are all very highly trained athletes. They're all really fit, they're all really strong, and when they're out on the bike, the mental element is just a huge part of it, and you need to be really into it. Silva Valsecchi, she's been in the peloton for nearly 2 decades. She's a really good athlete. She works under Sigrid Cornio, who's the team director there, and they have had a very solid place in the world of women's cycling for decades now, and it's great to see them out in Australia and motivated.
This is Chersini at the back of the group. Bridie, for the likes of Amanda Spratt and Ruth Winder, who aren't great sprinters targeting the intermediate sprint, which is coming up very shortly, to have 3 riders off the front going through that intermediate sprint, taking away the time bonuses, is actually a pretty good thing for them.
It absolutely is. If you're a team with a GC contender or someone like Spratt who's won 3 years in a row and you're absolutely targeting the overall, you want there to be sort of a distracting break out there that means you're not focused on controlling the race or chasing random breaks. You want this to be then something that sits out there and takes, and even might take away the opportunity for a sprinter and someone like Hosking to get additional points. So this is a win-win for a team like Mitchelton Scott.
Yeah, I mean, they're only 5k from the intermediate sprint, and I do wonder the conversation that's going on at Mitchelton Scott. They can't afford to use so much energy to bring back a small break like this, so it's a bit of a risk to leave it out there and to lose some points, but I think it's a gamble that they need to take. Every team will be looking to Mitchelton Scott to chase everything. You know, they will say, onus on you, you've won here before, we know you can win here again, you do it. And Mitchelton have to be very, very careful how they handle that.
Well, at the first of the intermediate sprints, it was Gracie Alvin from the Mitchelton Scott team who won the maximum points in the race for the Ziptrack sprint prize, and she also took the 3-second time bonus. This leading group of 3, they've already established a 30-second time gap with less than 5 kilometres to go to the second of the intermediate sprints in Echunga.
It's great to see these 3 teams as well, to have 2 Italian teams and to have a US-based team. Tipco have been a really long-established team in the United States. Their team director at this race is Joanne Kizanowski, who's a New Zealand Olympic rider with lots of experience, and we know that Sarah Gigante, who's the national time trial champion, also rides in this team. So a lot of youth, a lot of experience, and a great opportunity for these teams to get their jerseys live here on the Santos Women's Tour Down Under.
An interesting dynamic for Chloe Hosking and her team, Rally UHC. They only have 5 riders, so they've had a bit of injury. They also have a lot of athletes who are riding on the track, and there's a Track World Cup coming up in Milton in Canada, so a lot of the riders are getting ready for that. It's meant that she only has 4 ladies to work for her instead of 5. That makes a big difference. That is a really big resource that they're missing, and what that means is when the other teams look to Rally and say, well, you've got one of the race favourites, you do the work, they're simply not in a position to do it. Chloe will have to be quite resourceful and look after herself a bit. You know, I think these small breaks, you look on the face of it, they don't look that dangerous, but when you consider all of the other pieces that are going on in the background, you know, it could pose a bit of a threat. No real climb, small breaks, sprinters stages. I mean, these breakaways, they're opportunistic and they animate it.
She has to play a good game of bluff, Chloe Hosking.
But she's good at that. She's great at that, and she backs herself. You know, you ask her before the stage, how are you feeling? And she will say, I feel good, I feel fit, I can win this. That's in quite stark contrast to a lot of the athletes who say, it's time and time again, they say, oh, I feel all right, we'll see how we go. I just love the, I can win this. And that's what Caleb Ewan does.
Yeah.
And it's such a good attribute in an athlete, because when the little things go wrong in a bunch, and Brody, so much goes wrong. Between your legs feeling not great, you miss a water bottle at the feed, an attack goes with a rider that you didn't anticipate. All of these things put stress on it. But when you're so confident, it kind of bounces off you. You don't even absorb all those anxious points. You save a lot of energy.
3 kilometres to go to the Ziptrack intermediate sprint in Echunga.
And to have an adaptable plan, we all have a goal or a plan for the stage, but you have to have a plan B, C, D, all the way down to F, because you know that, as you said, things can happen, and also circumstances can change within your team. Someone says, I want to be in that break, or I've punctured, and you have less of a lead out. So we know with Chloe, she's able to get on the wheels and trains of other riders, and I was fortunate enough to race with her in 2009 when we won the Tour of Chongming Island. She was much younger, obviously 11 years younger, incredibly fast and really positive and opportunistic. And all you had to do was put Chloe in the best position with about 1 kilometre to go, and she would follow all those wheels. I've seen riders like Robbie McEwen do that. He would say, I don't see riders, I just see gaps. Here I am quoting the great poet Robbie McEwen, but you know what I mean. So that's what you want. You want confidence and aggression.
The weather, 21.3 degrees or 70 degrees Fahrenheit. The wind at around about 19 kilometres per hour. Every single rider in the race, I'd imagine Kate Bates, would have signed up for these weather conditions.
Well, it's interesting because we think ideal conditions to ride your bike. But a lot of the Australians are really heat adapted. So they've been training in exceptionally tough conditions. We've had a horrid Australian summer from the fires and the extreme heat. So the Australians are adapted to something quite different to what we're seeing. This brings it back a bit and favours the Europeans a little bit more, because at this temperature, they'll be chilly on the start line. They won't be sweating, and it won't be about that.
2 kilometres to go to Echunga for the Ziptrack intermediate sprint. Amanda Spratt's also been preparing for Tokyo, for the Olympic Games, where she will be one of the big favourites, and preparing for the humidity. She has been doing training at home on the ergo, on the stationary bike, in the bathroom with the heater on and no ventilation.
I don't know if there's some listeners who remember Heather Turland, a great marathon runner from Australia. She talked about when she prepared for the marathon, I believe, in Kuala Lumpur. She trained in her kitchen with all of the pots and pans, boiling water for increased humidity. Now, obviously, we know that a lot of institutes of sport have heat chambers. They talk about sauna training. I've done that before, where you go and get in the sauna after riding, so you're super dehydrated, you're not allowed to drink. All of those things help with plasma volume expansion. They help with your muscles and your mitochondria to adapt. And we know Rachel Nayland's an athlete that is really serious about committing to heat adaptation. She's done that very well. So you're right, Kate, for some of those riders, they'd be feeling probably slightly frustrated that it isn't more oppressive for them to make it more difficult.
Turn our attention to the second of the intermediate sprints. The breakaway, they're approaching Echunga. They're roughly 1 kilometre away from the Ziptrack intermediate sprint. Race Radio is telling us, Kate, that the tempo back in the peloton is also starting to heat up, as the break has just gone past that 1 kilometre marker to the intermediate sprint. The last time check we had was 30 seconds. It'll be interesting to see what Gracie Alvin does back in that group, because there's big points at these intermediate sprints as the peloton is strung out. It's 20 points for the win, 17, 15, 13, working its way down to 1. And it looks like that breakaway may well be reeled back in.
It's Team Sunweb really setting the pace on the front of the peloton. They're in the red kit, so if you look on the left of the road, you can see them quite strung out. They're working for Leah Kirschman. She got second in that first intermediate sprint. And as we saw in the earlier interview from her, she really believes that the overall could come down to points earned in the intermediate sprint. She's pretty motivated, not only for the in-stage action, but also for the overall, and Sunweb are really looking after her. That came back so quickly, didn't it? What a big differential of speed.
She's putting herself in a good position. They're just about to catch the breakaway group of 3. It's Jazina who's trying to hold on, but she gets reeled back in as well as they make their way around this really tight corner. Into Echunga once again for the second of the Ziptrack intermediate sprints, and it's the LA colours towards the front. The orange colours, it could be Chloe Hosking who's getting herself in the mix. It is Chloe Hosking. that the maximum points once again go into the Sunweb team. Leah Kirschman, it was, who finished in second position at the first of the intermediate sprints, but we'll just wait for confirmation. What is clear is the intent from Sunweb to pick up the intermediate sprint for the time bonuses, I believe, much more than the actual points for the sprint classification.
Well, that was a bit of a slog uphill, slightly uphill to that sprint. You could see that the riders really labouring. Really interesting, Chloe Hosking sitting third wheel for her to sprint intermediate. It shows that she is also concerned about the overall impact on the race of those points. Leah Kirschman, you can see that, you know, that has a real impact on her. She's breathing quite heavily and looks quite laboured.
You can see Hosking now coming up around the outside there. So on the left of your screen, Kirschman chasing down the Ale Cipollina rider, Cosina. So Kirschman comes over the top of her, and then Hosking sort of sits up once she realises she's in an easy third, and Lotta, Hertlano and Elvin coming in fourth and fifth.
So they've obviously chosen Gracie Elvin for Mitchelton Scott to go for these intermediate points and to look after that. But when you get Chloe Hosking in the mix as well, the real sprinters come through. Gracie Elvin, an incredible classics rider, not necessarily a sprinter. Lotta Hentala, she's putting quite a lot in. I mean, she came out here last year and she struggled in the heat, and she really struggled with the conditions. I know that she's come back this year a bit better prepared, and hopefully with a bit more oomph to race. She's certainly showing some intent.
45 kilometres to race on stage one of the Santos Women's Tour Down Under. There's 4 stages in the race. It all finishes in the heart of Adelaide on Sunday. 2 intermediate sprints have been contested. There's still 1 to go. Importantly, there are time bonuses. Leah Kirschman, the Canadian from the Sunweb team, she was second in the first sprint, first in the second sprint. That puts her in the virtual general classification 5 seconds ahead of all of her major rivals, such as Ruth Winder and Amanda Spratt.
The roads they're on now, they're quite exposed, and I think wind can really start to play a part. The field has strung out a bit instead of being just a big blob across the whole road, and as I say that, of course, they blob up. Thanks, ladies. But they were a bit more single file. The pace is going on and off. In some pre-race interviews, we heard the riders make comments that it doesn't lack climbs. They may not have these, you know, long, really impactful climbs, but they're not dead flat either, Brody. And these roads, I mean, we've ridden countless kilometres out there. They're pretty dead. So if you're not really pedalling and putting a lot of power through the pedals each time, you kind of stop a bit dead. It's not a beautiful tarmac.
And exactly as you've just said that, we're seeing the rock solid attacker rider on the left. I think that's Emily Herfoss, just experiencing a little bit of that stop and start that you get as the peloton expands to fill the size of the road and then condenses again when people go on the move. So someone like Amanda Spratt, you don't normally see her at the back of a group at this point. So I think there are riders still trying to establish, should we break now in this sort of rather no man's land kind of between sprint 2 and sprint 3.
Number 151 in the rock salt attacker colours, Justine Barrow, 40 years of age, full-time physiotherapist, and the only rider capable of sticking with Amanda Spratt up Mount Buninyong on Sunday to collect the silver medal at the National Championships. That was an impressive second place finish.
Oh, it was a seriously impressive ride. Not only could she stick with Amanda Spratt, she also stuck it to Amanda Spratt and attacked over the top a couple of times. I mean, this course this week won't necessarily suit a pure climber like Justine, but she's pretty savvy, and she's certainly got the fitness in the legs. Just out of shot, we just saw a small group going off the back. That, I think, is a good indicator of where the pace was at after that sprint and the impact that actually had on the broader group. The field, while they are all together, we can see that over to the left the pressure's been put on a little bit more, and some of the teams, as we're inside 50 kilometres to go now, they know that they can spend a bit more energy, and it's a bit more strategic to do that now.
What I'm interested too today is the fact that there is a third intermediate sprint at 101 kilometres in exactly the same point, the same layout, and then 15 kilometres to the finish, where they'll come looping back around and find themselves, in a much more technical mode to try and get around a couple of left-handers and then into the finishing straight. So to have only 15 kilometres between an intermediate sprint and a finish line is really going to keep that pace very high.
It was super tight, that corner, as they made that right-hand turn. And then inside the last 1.3 kilometres, Kate, they turn sharp left, they do gentle left, then they go left, left again. It is a technical last 1,300 metres.
I feel like you look at the course outline and you kind of think it's a joke. You're like, what? Why is the finish like that? It does animate that sprint a little bit, and it does change the dynamics and the strategy of a sprint finish rather than a big, long, straight lead-in. And it will be interesting to see, especially with Rally, whether they just get Chloe Hosking into a safe position up the front or whether they actually do a lead-out train.
The Roxot attacker team coming up towards the front, one of the Australian domestic teams, and it is proven to be a strong team. They have former Australian National Road Champion Peter Mullins, who's won titles in mountain biking and in track cycling. And as a junior, she also won plenty of running titles, endurance running, mind you.
She's got skills to pay the bills, Peter Mullins. I mean, she's super impressive, and every summer she just delivers. Sometimes she's winning, sometimes she's in the top 5, in the top 10, but she is always part of the race and always a very obvious contributor.
Yeah, she finds a way to make an impact. But it's a team that's got lots of cards to play. In addition to Peter Mullins, they have Justine Barra, who we spoke about a moment ago. But the rider from that team that I'm really looking forward to seeing in action is Emily Herfoss. She won the National Road Series in 2019. At the recent National Championship, she was 3rd in the time trial, just 10 seconds off the win, 30 seconds in front of Amanda Spratt, and she was 4th in the road race. Great results that have slipped under the radar a little.
Well, she's another rider who's taken a bit of time out from the sport and decided whether she really wants to do it or not. But I've got to say, she is one of the most exciting talents Australian cycling has had in a very long time. If she really wants to commit to the sport, Brody, I think she's capable of being our next Amanda Spratt.
We've seen her and her partner really take their specific training very seriously. They looked at a course around near where they live that matched the Buninyong circuit, and both really prepared diligently. He rode in the men's elite race, is obviously a very high-profile superbike rider, so very handy on the corners. But Emily, in her original name, Emily Roper, was a great under-23 and junior rider in Australia. And you're right, she needed clearly to take a bit of a time out, particularly around the rigours of travel and study and work and relationships. All of those things, trying to balance that can be really challenging for a young rider. So she seems to have come back newly motivated.
She's got the right team around her. She's got good form. She will be a factor in this race. Whether she can challenge or not the defending champion, Amanda Spratt, the roads will help make the decision on that. But let's now hear from the current Santos Women's Tour Down Under champion, Amanda Spratt, and her memorable moment of 2019.
2019 was another really successful year for me, and with my Mitchelton Scott team. Particular highlights, I think, were I got 3rd in the Giro Rosa, that's the women's Grand Tour equivalent, I guess, and riding in support of my teammate Annemiek, who won the Giro. So that was a big highlight for me. Also, bronze medal in the World Championships in Yorkshire was another big highlight, racing for the Australian national team, and I had fantastic team support there, so I was really proud to get that medal. And certainly heading into this season, it's a big one with the Olympics. That's a big goal for me, as well as the World Championships again, so it gives me a lot of confidence heading into a new season.
And what gives Australian cycling confidence in Amanda Spratt heading towards Tokyo, and what gives Mitchelton Scott confidence in Amanda Spratt heading into any season, is she's 32 years of age, but every single season there's steady progress.
She had a huge period in her mid-20s of injury, quite significant injury that really curtailed her progress and threatened to really end her career in cycling. I think what makes Amanda Spratt so impressive is how resilient she is, what a fighter she is. She's out there knowing that just a few years earlier, she was only ever a week away from retiring and not being able to overcome, the adversity she faced. So mentally, I don't think there's anyone tougher in the field. She can smile and easily say, I've got the confidence to get ready for Tokyo. She can head to the Olympics knowing that if it all falls into place for her, she can win a gold medal. And I think riders like Amanda Spratt and like Chloe Hosking, who, really brings that confidence, they kind of show the impact that really backing yourself can have. And it gives you the confidence to train harder, to race harder, and just have kind of an X factor of fate, if you will. I can't even explain it, but it is kind of this X factor that elevates them to the next level.
I'm loving seeing these aerial shots, not only of where we are in the Adelaide Hills, but of the peloton. You don't always get to see these images of Australian riders, and so it's so fantastic about the Santos Women's Tour Down Under being brought to our screens. But to see, as you said, the way the peloton are winding through these roads, they're dead roads, there's a moderate amount of wind. It's not easy, it's not simple to kind of maintain this pace in stage one.
And to explain what a dead road is, if you're riding on beautiful tarmac, you can accelerate, not pedal, and your bike will keep moving forward. You know, you get a lot of momentum on those beautiful smooth roads. It's like riding on a velodrome. On these, when we say dead roads, the road surface is a bit rough, it's not great condition. If you stop pedaling, you stop moving. And that, it is quite taxing. And a lot of country roads in Australia are of that surface.
They feel like quicksand. It's that nightmare that you have when you're running and somebody is walking and they're catching you.
It's that moment where you look down because you think maybe you have a flat tyre.
And the brakes are rubbing.
Yeah, they're always
and
rubbing.
You adjust them and you look at your tyres and you think, oh no, it's my legs.
This is the Canyon SRAM team coming up towards the front. That's a team with one of the local heroes, Tiff Cromwell. Tiff, for her, this race is a significant race. It'd be nice to see Tiff win a stage throughout the Santos Women's Tour Down Under.
Yeah, she's from Adelaide. She's lived in the Adelaide Hills. She obviously lives now in Monaco, and so only comes home for a summer period to do some racing here and probably to wave to her family. Her family have been incredibly supportive of her career, so it's definitely got a strong place in her heart to do this race and to bring her teammates to her hometown. I think is a really important celebration of this team. The other great fact about Canyon SRAM is that they now have a female DS, Beth Duray, who used to be a soigneur for the Australian national team. She passed the UCI Director Sportive training program last year and is officially accredited now to be a director, and there aren't that many women who are DSs in international UCI teams. She brings this wealth of experience and a great calm, considered, experienced attitude, and Beth is this familiar face in the women's professional peloton.
The team's also got another rider that I want to take a look at, but we'll get back to that in a moment because there's no prizes. Close your eyes, Kate. Guess which team's going on the attack?
Oh, let me guess. Dolcini Van Eyck.
Somehow you managed to get it right. They've got a clear strategy. They are consistently going on the move. I like this approach.
It's not a bad strategy to make it obvious either, because quite often then it means that a rider will go with them and they're not out there on their own. A successful breakaway doesn't necessarily need the element of surprise. It needs timing and it needs the right members. And Dolcini Van Eyck Sport have shown that they believe the best way to attack this race is to, literally attack the riders, attack the race. And they're doing a great job. They'll take the QOM already with Van Witzenberg. And now,
This is Hanselman for the second time trying to get off the front. One of the FDJ riders was trying to go across. I couldn't quite pick who it was. I wonder if it's one of the 3 French women on that team who got stuck in Dubai for somewhere in the vicinity of 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, 4 days, I
4
believe.
days without being able to ride.
It's like one of those airport movies, where they're stuck in there and they're dotting around trying to figure out what to do. I think, look, they're fresh. I mean, that we can give them that. That's something that your legs need to be successful, right?
It did actually raise a pretty logistically challenging question to ask the race director. You can only start, you have to have 4 riders to start a tour, and with 3 in Australia and 3 at the Dubai Mall shopping, they were concerned that if they didn't make it, the whole team wouldn't be able to start. And we know we have 3 very motivated Australian riders in Brody Chapman, Shara Gillow and Lauren Kitchen riding the Française de Jeu team. So it was fantastic that their 3 teammates from France could arrive, including the French national champion, Jade Vert.
I think some of those rules are a bit archaic, actually. We need to be dynamic.
This is significant, Kate, because number 51 is Brody Chapman, and she is a dark horse for this race.
Well, she said that she's fit, but she said that if she wins, she thinks people might be a bit surprised. She thinks she's a bit of an underdog, and I kind of laughed at that. She laughed back, but I don't know if she was...
She rates herself less than everybody else does.
She is so talented, and not only that, she's got incredible skills. She started on a mountain bike, and she just got a really great attitude about it all too.
We often talk about that transition from mountain bike or BMX or track to road. She started on a mountain bike, yeah. But she started as a downhill mountain bike rider. She's got amazing skills.
Well,
and no fear.
Yeah, and she, it's a family affair for her. Her mum, I know, is sitting at home watching the live stream, so shout out hi to Bernie, mum of Brody Chapman. And Bernie goes riding as well. It's a really passionate thing in their family. It's not just about racing, it's about the freedom and the love of riding a bike. Brody will attack this, and if it works, she'll be hoorah. If it doesn't, she'll go, oh well, I gave it a crack.
at the Herald Sun Tour a couple of years ago, Brody, she broke away, similar fashion to this, with around 35 to 40 kilometres to go. Similar situation to what we're in now. She established an advantage of a little over 35 to 40 seconds, and she held off Annemiek van Vleuten, who was then a reigning world time trial champion and is the current road champion. She's a rider that will catch the attention of the rest of the peloton.
I remember when we were calling that stage, I think it was in Healesville, she had to hold on to a lead on a descent, and for a lot of people they didn't know who Brody was, and she'd obviously performed quite well in the summer, but this was absolutely a moment that brought her to the fore, and then her name to the minds of so many team directors. She was incredible that day, and then incredible in that really short explosive time trial along South Bank, to outride a world champion and to hold on to the leader's jersey. She was just absolutely stoked.
She took leave without pay to beat the world champion.
Oh, it's super impressive. Look, she had a really tough year in 2019 after that. She came to the Tour Down Under hoping to have a big impact, ended up quite unwell and quite ill and wasn't able to race, which was really disappointing for her. And she had, an up and down season. She had some high moments, but she also had some moments where she really struggled, and I think it was very formative for her. So she comes back this year kind of with a renewed attitude and a renewed fitness, and I certainly would be circling her name on any start list as a one to watch. It's curious that I use the term let her get away, but some of the teams aren't a bit more concerned about letting Brody Chapman go up the road. When I raced, my coach Gary Sutton used to say to me, there's a group of ladies that you never let leave the island. That's what he used to say. So if they leave the island, you go with them.
The challenge, of course, in any peloton, there's 94 riders in this group that, the women who are on the front of the peloton might be able to catch the number of the rider who's accelerated away. But if you're in the middle group or maybe near the back, you don't know who those people are. And if your race radio is not functioning as well as you'd like, or there's other issues that can mean that you don't know what's happening.
Race radio has just provided the update, confirming to the rest of the convoy the numbers of the riders in the breakaway and their time gap of 25 seconds. That will now be getting communicated through the race.
But that brings up a really interesting point, because you cannot rely on race radio. You cannot rely on other people giving you information. You need to pay attention. The best riders out there, they're really intuitive about how they race. They keep it's like they have 10 different eyes. They look at everything that's going on and they know where all of the danger riders are. At the end of the day, it's simply not a very good excuse to say, I didn't realise it was Brody. It's your job to realise. You can't rely on your team director back in the car. They can see even less than you can.
Two riders off the front with an advantage of almost 30 seconds. 37 kilometres remaining on stage one of the women's Santos Tour Down Under. Ziptrack Stage 1 from Hahndorf to Macclesfield for the 2020 Santos Women's Tour Down Under. Breakaway group of 2 riders with an advantage now of just over 50 seconds on the peloton. Matthew Keenan with you along with Kate Bates. And Kate, we're joined by triple Olympic Games gold medalist Anna Mears. Anna, these are the roads that put fear into track cyclists, particularly sprinters, but today is a day for the fast finishers.
Absolutely, these roads do put the fear in the legs of the sprinters, and I can't say like Kate, having said that she's ridden over them many, many times. I have not, but yes, definitely a day for the sprinters, and definitely an aggressive day with the weather being a bit cooler and bonus time being available in the intermediate sprints as well, so exciting to watch.
Kate, just a moment ago, Brody took a look at the camera, and classic Brody Chapman style, she had a big smile on her face.
Oh, she's an absolute cracker. She's got such a good attitude. Honestly, I think she could laugh through anything. Anna, I don't laugh through everything. You've seen me complain after, long rides and long race days out there. It is hard to be positive through everything. You have good days, you have bad days. But Brody, I think she's got nothing to lose.
No, she's got nothing to lose. She's loving being out here for the Santos Women's Tour Down Under. But all the women are loving that it's being covered live as well for the audiences at home to be able to come along for the ride. So I think they're really lapping up this experience with the live coverage.
Well, they call it the couch peloton. All the people at home sitting on the couch cheering away, and it's unreal. I think that if you can see it, you can be it, and we're really, having the opportunity to inspire a whole generation of cyclists to come because, they can see what's out there.
Absolutely.
So often in this race, the weather is a hot talking topic. Today, it's not such a hot talking topic, but it has been spoken about a lot because it's 21 pleasant degrees.
I know, and actually quite unnatural or uncommon for this time of year. We're very renowned here for the Santos Tour Down Under, both the women's and the men's, for having hot conditions. We saw last year for the women's tour when they finished on top of Mangler's Hill on stage 2, the road bitumen was actually melting. It was so hot. So conditions being at 21 degrees today, this is quite pleasant, and as you said earlier, plays into the hands of the Europeans a little bit more than the Aussies.
Kate, there's one more intermediate sprint to come. That's at 14.8 kilometres to go, and that's coming through Chunga for the third and final time. In the previous intermediate sprint, we saw Leah Kirschman again collect a time bonus. She's now virtual race leader, 5 seconds ahead of the likes of Amanda Spratt, the defending champion. But Chloe Hosking got herself involved in the sprint, putting some cards on the table that she wants to take some of those time bonuses and put herself in contention for the final overall victory.
Well, and the intermediate sprints can kind of work two ways from a strategic point of view. You can either chase them one or two, build your confidence in how you're going, or you can see them as a bit taxing and only choose one. Brody Chapman, she's riding away here from Hanselman. Look, we'll be honest, they're at a different level. Brody Chapman, if she wins this race, we wouldn't be surprised. Nicole Hanselman, if she wins this race, we would be a bit surprised. No disrespect at all. She just doesn't quite have the calibre at the international races just yet. But this is difficult because this means it puts a lot of pressure on Brody. She now doesn't have really somebody to work with.
Brody's waiting. Brody has made the decision. She saw that she was dropping Hanselman. She wasn't trying to ride away from her. She's just stronger. It's as simple as that. I like this reaction by Nicole Hanselman, and she's gone straight back to the front. I'll do what I can.
Absolutely, yeah. She's got an opportunity here to work with Brody Chapman right through to the finish with only 31.9 kilometres to go, to really be up there for the end result as well. So if they can keep this breakaway going by working together, that's really crucial. And making decisions on the fly without hesitation, like Brody, realising that just dropped her a little bit there, knew that she needed the help to be able to keep this breakaway away. Very smart on her part.
Kate, we saw at the front of the peloton the orange colours of the rally team, Chloe Hosking. As you spoke about earlier on, she's got one less teammate than everybody else.
It does make it tougher. The women's team, they only have 6 on the start line, less than the men, so it really does change the dynamic of the racing. But if you break it down and you think, in a lead out, you want 2 to 3 riders, so that takes up 3 or 4 of the team. You want somebody to be able to grab water bottles, that's somebody else. And then you need somebody to chase brakes and to do the work. Who are they missing? Where are they going to take that from? Does that mean they're getting their own bottles, they're chasing their own brakes, or they're reducing the sprint lead out?
I think they reduce the sprint lead out because Chloe can take care of business.
Absolutely, and they have had a look at this finish run-in by the laps that they've had after the last sprint in Echuca and going through to Macclesfield already. So they've had a bit of an eye, will have a bit of an eye in as they do this circuit around through to the finish line. And Chloe, you know, we know her. She's very savvy. She's very smart. She's very good at following wheels. She's a Commonwealth Games gold medalist on the road. We saw her take a win at the Bay Crits as well. So, yeah, I think even though she's maybe down in numbers for a team, I think she's still very savvy enough to take the win herself.
Kate, new team for Brody Chapman this year with the French outfit, FDJ. She doesn't have a point to prove, but it's always nice to get off to a good start with a new team.
Oh, of course it is. And Brody rode last year for Tipco. That was her first professional team. And she cited her move over to Francais de Jeu as being about wanting to be in Europe more. So Tipco was an American-based team who travelled to Europe. But FDJ, it gives her the opportunity to be based in Europe for the whole year. You know, she has struggled a bit with the back and forth, with the travel, and with all the stresses outside purely the sporting element. You put her on a bike, the girl can race. You know, she knows what to do. She's absolutely tough as they come. But it's all those stresses around it that can really impact. I think she's done a very smart move. She's considered what she needs, you know, and she's made it happen. And already we're seeing the results of that.
Stage 1, Ziptrack Stage 1 for the Santos Women's Tour Down Under. The gap is out to 1 minute and 4 seconds. You talk about stress. Is this causing any stress in the peloton? It doesn't look like it.
This is a classic blob, isn't it? I mean, that's a very technical term, isn't it? The blobby bunch, but they're not in the least bit interested.
Is this the standoff? Okay, we're not going to chase. No, you chase. No, it's your responsibility to chase. But we don't have the leader's jersey. It's Stage 1, there's no leader's jersey.
Yeah, and obviously Mitchelton Scott being the most looked at team here, you know, being the favourites, they're also doing a bit of standoff here, putting a bit of onus back on the sprinters teams, because if they want the stage win, because this is very much suited to the sprinters, they're going to have to start getting all their ducks in order and their trains in order to be able to rein this back, and also gauge how much distance they can give to the breakaway to be able to bring it back by the finish.
And the general rule on that is 10 seconds for a kilometre. You know, so a minute, 60 seconds, it won't worry them too much. If they really want to rally, they will be able to bring that back. But 20k to go is when I say business end. You know, so they've still got a bit to go.
The Uni SA colours were coming towards the front. We see a counter-attack now coming from the LA team. They want to get a piece of the action. But with the gap out over 1 minute, these are the sorts of moves that cause the rest of the peloton to follow.
I mean, sometimes this can be quite destructive to the chase when it's on-off. So they make these attacks, they don't go anywhere, enough people respond, and now look, they sit up and they just stop pedaling. And that stop-start compared to the consistency at the front that Brody's providing more, you know, more of a time trial kind of scenario, it can actually benefit the breakaway.
This is Trixie Warwick coming through to the front for the Canyon Tram team.
She's got 2 decades in the sport, Trixie. You know, 20 years she's been racing professionally. Isn't that amazing?
That is very impressive.
Make you feel old, and it makes me feel old. When I retired, I thought I was a good retirement age, and Trixie Warwick is older than me, was racing, and is still going.
Yeah, that yo-yo effect you were talking about, the stop-start, can really hurt the legs, especially in these conditions on these dead roads with potential for wind, and the smooth nature of the breakaway. Actually, this yo-yo nature of what the bunch is doing at the moment can actually benefit the breakaway, just to extend their lead and stay away.
In fact, that was Tanya Erith from the Canyon Tram team that was going off the front. Trixie Warwick rides for the Trek Segafredo team, but I'm sure that we're going to see her towards the front at the business end of this race, because they are a team with a contender for the overall classification.
Well, there's a good mix in the peloton of the elder statesmen, the more mature ladies, if we want to call them that. But we've also got a couple of 18-year-olds out there. Gosh, there's nothing to make you feel old like seeing a birth date in the 2000s. Yeah, the 14th of November, 2001 is our youngest rider, Ashley Jones.
Goodness me, I remember writing that date in my high school margins of my notebook. So
yeah, I mean, she missed Y2K. She doesn't even know that exists.
Well, amongst the riders in the peloton that we've seen fairly active so far has been the Canadian from the Sunweb team, Leah Kirschman. Let's now get her thoughts on this race with a strong team around her for support.
This is the Team Sunweb's women's team, first time in Australia. The men have raced in the Tour Down Under before, but we're really excited to join them here for the event. And yeah, I've honestly only heard good things from other teams who've raced here before, and it's just really well run. You know, we have live coverage of the racing. All of the stages look super dynamic, and we're just really well supported. we came with a really strong lineup. Sunweb has quite a young team. We really focus on developing talented riders, and so I think we kind of have an open approach to the race. I'm the main sprinter, and we have a few options going for the GC, so we'll see how it turns out.
I think she could be the option for the GC. There she is, number 12. She's had good preparation for the race, as she spent a couple of weeks in New Zealand prior to coming across here to Adelaide.
She's a very slight rider. You tend to look at the riders and their physiques and kind of put them in a box and say climber, sprinter. I mean, we're unaware of the big thigh sprinting community, so for us you could probably do that. But Leah looks, she's quite compact. She looks like she could be a climber. I think that can make her a lot more dynamic. Her power to weight is way up from if she did carry a lot more muscle mass. And she weaves through the bunch really well. But what's been really encouraging, and you can see this aerial shot is just brilliant to show it, is that red. There's 4 Sunweb riders all together. Leah Kirschman is being really well protected. It means that she doesn't have any wind on her. It means that she can, take advantage of that. Less power, less watts through the pedals, more energy for the finish.
Absolutely. The Sunweb team are doing a really good job looking after Leah at the moment, and really this is a team sport where an individual wins in some context, and that's hard to get your head around for a lot of viewers as well, but it will be interesting, especially with the tactics and the strategy that they're employing, where these time bonuses are really crucial to them, because there are no hilltop finishes here, even though it gets a bit lumpy and bumpy along the way, especially the Nan to Stirling stage on stage 3. These time bonuses can be really critical, especially when we see stage 4, the city circuit, where riders like Amanda Spratt won't be in the mix for sprints and time bonuses on that day. So any advantage that they can get over a rider like Amanda Spratt from Mitchelton Scott early in these stages will benefit them.
There is Amanda Spratt wearing number 1, the defending champion of the Santos Women's Tour Down Under. She's won the race for the past 3 years. This is the 5th edition of the race. It is Ziptrack Stage 1 as they're making their way through to Macclesfield. A first-time host of a stage finish, and it is a really technical approach to the finish, Kate Bates. And a recon of that approach to the finish could be the difference today.
Yeah, they have quite a few corners in that final kilometre. Four corners, Anna. It's like a square velodrome, really. But the Rally UHC team, their team director is Joanne Kizanowski. She's an Olympian from New Zealand. She won so many races on the road and track. She was a sprinter, so they're in good hands. They went out there early. They got on the bike. Joe got on with them, and they went around. They took a look. They did the corners again and again. The final corner is a bit off camber. It is quite tight. If you're not in the top 10 in the final kilometre, I think you're kidding yourself if you think you can finish in the top 10. I think really it will come down to positioning, and a lot of the jobs for the teams for Rally, their race, except for Chloe Hosking, may finish with a kilometre to go. Get Chloe into a good position and get the heck out of the way.
This is the front of the race. This is Brody Chapman for a new team for her, but one of the most established teams in the peloton, FDJ. She's on her own again. She's dropped her breakaway companion. Hasselman has not been able to maintain the tempo of the Australian, who arrives with not top form, but pretty good form. She was 9th on Sunday at the National Championships.
Well, it was a good decision by Brody. I mean, she opted to try and wait for Nicole to be able to come up and work with her through to the finish, but obviously hasn't been able to hold the wheel, so she's decided to make the commitment and go out on her own.
Kate, rule number 1 with kids sport is have fun. I've seen Brody 3 or 4 times already have a smile to the camera. She was having a chuckle to some spectators on the side of the road. She's got a big tick next to rule number 1.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think one defining thing about Brody is that she's a no regrets kind of girl. She goes out with an attitude with nothing to lose, and that can be really defining. This is a good move to be solo. Henselman, great attitude, great attack. She's been aggressive all day, the whole team has, but she isn't able to really contribute in a meaningful way that Brody needs. If Brody waited any more for her, it would be to the detriment.
1 minute and 52 seconds is the advantage for Brody Chapman.
It's exciting.
Over the peloton.
And it probably obviously gives her a bit more confidence too. She's really staying true to herself. A rider like Brody, so happy on the bike, for me, irritates me because I'm the type of rider who likes seriousness. So it's actually really good to see that from Brody's point of view.
Serious or grumpy? Which word do we go with?
Kind of between the two. Frumpy.
This is Hasselmann, who started the breakaway, and unfortunately for her, she's been distanced by Brody Chapman. She's been the Swiss time trial champion, she's been the Swiss road race champion, but she has come out of the European winter to land in Adelaide. So for her, it's a different time of the season to what it is for Brody Chapman. And for Brody Chapman, this is a much bigger target than what it is for Hasselmann.
Look, full credit to her. And I think the way you approach a race, this team has obviously come here to make an impact. They'll take the QOM already with Van Witzenberg. And Hasselmann has shown that she's on good form. I mean, she may be missing that fine tuning, but she's obviously fit, and day by day she might actually ride into this race a bit more. But what she's lost is the anonymous factor, because at the beginning of today, maybe not many of the peloton knew her name, but they certainly do now.
For the internationals, a race like this, how important can it be to set up the rest of their season?
Yeah, I think a lot of that is actually, from a confidence and a mental perspective. If they can start the season with a bang, so to speak, and know that they're fit and they're strong, it just kind of paves the way, to building on that and going into the Spring Classics. The Spring Classics are, March, April. It's really not that far away. It's week. You can count it in weeks, not even months. And so this can play a really critical role in preparing them for that.
And it comes around really, really quickly. And often it's been said that it's much better to try and hold form than chase form.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the riders throughout the season target it so specifically that they have gaps. That they know that form has a limit, and once you tip over that edge, oh heavens, it's a very quick descent on the other side, right? And so targeting form and making sure that the preparation in the long term is there is a really critical factor. Brody Chapman, she's had her eye on this for years, since last year when she wasn't able to race.
And a lot of the Europeans too, it's hard for us to know, and probably in some ways this is a test for them to know where their form is at too, coming out of their winter into the Australian summer. And a lot of them love to come here because it's just more comfortable getting the training under the legs and being out in the sunshine as well. So this is a bit of a testing ground for a lot of the internationals as well.
What we do know, particularly based on the performance of Matthew Heyman a few years ago when he won Paris-Roubaix through spending 6 weeks training in his garage on the home trainer with Zwift, is that you can get a lot done really well indoors. And Jessica Pratt, who's making her debut at international level with the Canyon SRAM racing team, she managed to get on that team through the Zwift Academy. So you can get a lot done indoors now.
Yeah, the training philosophy has really changed. A decade ago, it was measured in kilometres and hours spent on the bike. It was actually more about quantity than quality. And you used to just spend what you felt like were needless hours pedaling. That's changed a bit. We know now that they can prepare for races like this that go for about 3 hours with some much more dynamic sessions and training. And so the indoor element, it actually brings the Europeans and the Australians closer together, because it takes the weather out of it and the elements out of it. And people say that how lucky the Australians to prepare so well in a summer. Let's be honest, their preparation's been hideous, because we've had, Rachel Neylan has had to move 6 times through the summer because every training ground she has been fire affected. That affects her physical preparation, but it's also really rattled her. A lot of the Australians are struggling to process what's been happening to the country. And I think that this race plays a really, really important part. They will be riding through some fire-affected areas. They're open for business. They're ready to regenerate and get back out there. And a race like the Santos Women's Tour Down Under is such an important piece of that, not only for the communities, but also for the athletes to feel like they can be part of that healing process.
Yeah, absolutely. Back in the day, some of the endurance riders on the team would actually spend more kilometres riding their bike than driving their cars. Many of them would sell their cars, so definitely the indoor-outdoor training has certainly changed. But Australian summers has certainly been very challenged this year, and all our thoughts are with the fire-affected communities as we see them take this tight right-hand bend. And like we said, Adelaide Hills is open for business, and it's most important to get the communities back up and running on their feet by supporting them by going out there.
Well, Brody Chapman is very much open for business as well. She's out in front on her own, riding the FDJ colours. 23 kilometres remaining. It is a 2-minute advantage for Brody Chapman, but the business end of the race is still to come. Ziptrack Stage 1 of the 2020 Santos Women's Tour Down Under. Matthew Keane with you, joined by Kate Bates and Brody O'Donnell. Breakaway group, Brody. It was a group, it's now down to one. Brody, we've seen Brody Chapman go off the front. She's kind of snuck away, and now it's not so much of a sneak away, but perhaps a panic in the peloton. She's out to an advantage of more than 2 minutes.
She looks strong and she's really motivated. I think Kate and I, when we were talking to her yesterday, she was talking about that off-season that's been a bit more bumpy than she would have liked. It's a new team. She obviously has some Australian teammates, but also some French teammates. And I think this is an experimental opportunity for her. She wants to see how do my legs feel, and clearly better than Hanselman's.
Kate, at what point in the peloton do the likes of Mitchelton Scott, Trek Segafredo, Sunweb say it's a pretty good time now to maybe panic just a little?
I would think that time is now. Yeah, I mean, look, the fast rule is generally 10 seconds per kilometre. We're coming into 20 kilometres to go. Her gap is out around 2 minutes. They would want to hustle. We've got 94 riders out there, 21 nations. It is a really strong field, but that means absolutely zippo if they don't get organised. So on paper we go, wow, what an impressive group of riders. But if they're just blobbing along and not prepared to get organised and chase, well, Brody Chapman gets the advantage, getting a last-minute feed from the car because the feed zone closes with 20 kilometres left to go. So that's very, very smart of the team to make sure she has that in her back pocket before they go into that critical finishing period.
And she's just gone into the clean zone. This is the area that we spoke about earlier on where she can actually drop her wrappers or any bid-on, etc.
Notice how interesting it was. She didn't want to hold on to the car. She didn't want to hold on to the hand of the person giving her food. We've seen riders being penalised with time penalties or even fined before, where they're hanging on for just that little bit too long. There's a famous Italian rider who's really, really good at it.
It's dodgy though. It's dodgy, right?
Absolutely.
If you hang on, you're gaining an advantage.
Yep.
I don't care what anybody says about it's just part of the sport. No. And I think what an exceptional example of that she won't even hang on for a single second, because to her it has to be cut and dry and clean, and just credit to her. We love Brody, don't we? We're like a Brody fan club right now. Go Brody.
She has set the benchmark. It is stage 1 of the 2020 Santos Women's Tour Down Under. Ziptrack stage 1, 116 kilometres. It started in Hahndorf and it makes its way through to Macclesfield. Hahndorf has been a regular starting and finishing place for both the men's and the women's Tour Down Under. Macclesfield hosting a stage finish for the first time. Recon all important of a technical finish approach, but it might be a rider that gets to go in there on her own, because Brody Chapman is going to take some catching.
Well, she's got 5 kilometres till the final intermediate sprint, and then there'll be 15k to go. I don't think she'll hold on for either of those. I think they'll be motivated enough, particularly Kirschman in her Sunweb team, Gracie in Mitchelton Scott. They don't want to lose points and time to a rider like Brody.
It's a big effort though, 2 minutes in 5 kilometres. I mean, that may be the intention, but I think they may be relegated to sprinting for second for the next intermediate sprint. But you're right, it's going to be a big effort to hang on to that finish.
The red colours of the Sunweb team, they're getting a little more serious. They've moved themselves up to the front. Leah Kirschman, who you've both just spoken about, she's made it pretty clear she's here with intentions for the Orca jersey. She was second in the first sprint. She won the second sprint. That gives her 5 seconds worth of time bonuses already. And we saw the podium for third and fourth change last year on time bonuses on the last stage.
At the beginning of the day, we would have said Mitchelton Scott. We're looking at them. They have the responsibility. Rally UHC, because of Chloe Hosking. The time gap out is nearly out to 3 minutes. Sunweb, it's time for them to step up. If they want Leah Kirschman to be a real contender for that ochre jersey, my goodness, those 3 teams, they need to take responsibility.
That time gap is correct. 2 minutes and 44 seconds is the advantage for Brody Chapman. She made a bold move to win the Herald Sun Tour in 2018. She's got perfect vision in 2020, and she's off to a flying start.
And who says the same move doesn't work twice? I mean, for a lot of riders, they think, oh, now I'm a marked rider, people won't let me get away. But as you said, Kate, that's actually been on them and probably some complacency. And they probably thought she was with Hanselman and wouldn't be so threatening. What we're seeing now is a great performance by a rider like her, and Rally are starting to rally at the front of the peloton, aren't they, to bring Chloe Hosking into a safer position.
Kate, if the chase doesn't get serious real soon, this is real bad news for the peloton.
Yeah, real good news for FDJ and Brody Chapman. I think I said it earlier, Matt, I would not have let Brody Chapman leave the island. At the beginning of any race, I would circle the riders who were danger, danger, danger. They do not go anywhere, they do not move. And that means 10 seconds, it means 20 seconds, it does not matter. I think this is a bit of an oversight from the teams, and I think some of them will be not quite panicking, but thinking, oh dear, we dropped the ball on this one. It doesn't mean they can't fix it and make it up, but they're going to spend a lot of energy chasing this back down.
Every time check that we've had come through from Race Radio has been going up. We're seeing a bit of a change in the complexion of the peloton. Lots of the orange colours of the rally team coming towards the front. I'm sure Brody's time advantage is going to get a haircut by the time it reaches the finish, but she may have enough in the legs and enough of an advantage to hold on and get a significant margin.
The critical factor, Brody, is whether they're prepared to work together.
And you're right, a coordinated chase will require teams with the same interests who are actually opponents to work together. I think what's interesting about what's happening now is we know points are up for grabs. These are the first UCI points of the 2020 season. The other thing I think you could ask yourselves is, while it's a shorter tour than some of the races that they do internationally and or whether a lot of the men's tours, is there an advantage for Mitchelton Scott to not have to defend a jersey for the next 2 days and the stress of that? So there might be teams who aren't necessarily aiming to win today.
Panic has reached the peloton. There are multiple teams chasing on Ziptrack Stage 1 of the Santos Women's Tour Down Under. Sunweb's chasing, so too Rally, Trek Segafredo, Mitchelton Scott, Canyon Tram. Multiple teams at the front chasing, and the gap for Brody Chapman is starting to be reduced.
Panic at the disco. Well, I mean, we knew that inside that final 20 kilometres, you just have to be diligent and you have to be exceptionally aware of what's going on. But I think a critical factor that we really need to consider, the motivation of Brody Chapman. She's got family at home watching. It means so much to her. To win this race, it would absolutely be a career-defining moment for her that she would likely talk to her grandkids about in the years to come. I can't honestly say the same for Aaliyah Kirschman. For an international racing, and yep, she'd love to win, but this isn't the absolute, gem on the top of her crown. And I think that goes a long way. When you're really hurting, you need a reason to fight. Brody's got a lot of reasons to fight. She will be hurting. She's going to hurt more in the next 16.4 kilometres, but she's got a reason to do it.
Brody, she's lost 15 seconds really quickly.
It just shows how one rider, even when they're powerful and a good climber, is not going to be able to hold off the force of, say, 30 or so women who are going to be working and rotating with motivations that are aligned, which is, let's bring all this back together, and then it's every woman for themselves in that really technical last part. So she'll win this next intermediate sprint as they come through Echunga, but that will then all come back together and it'll be just absolute fireworks.
Kate, the time gap looks like water going out of a bath at the moment with the plug pulled out. It is plummeting really quickly for Brody Chapman.
It's a little bit of a colander, isn't it? You pour the water in and straight out it goes. I mean, Brody's looking really smooth. She's going really well. She's in the big chainring. She's in the small cog at the back. She's clearly turning over that big gear and giving it everything she possibly can. That's all she can do at this point. But they're travelling at pretty high speeds. And when you're travelling at high speeds, that gap is harder to reduce because, there's less of a differential, really.
Yeah, she's not riding slowly. It's a comment more about the speed of the peloton than what it is on Chapman herself. The peloton is approaching the 1 kilometre marker to get to the third and final of the Ziptrack intermediate sprints. How much can that potentially disrupt the cohesion within the chase?
Well, that's the thing. Are they going, Sunweb and Trek Segafredo looking for those critical and crucial points at the intermediate sprint and the time gap, and then that will interrupt their chase and then it's all over? Or are they just plugging on to chase Brody? I actually think they're going for the intermediate sprint. I think after that, the time gap may go back out again.
We can see by this flag on the side of the road, it is a tailwind at this point. Here's the really tight right-hand turn into Echunga, and Brody Chapman will make that turn with 200 metres remaining, 15 kilometres to go on the stage. She will see the finish line for the Ziptrack intermediate sprint. Looks like she's put her brakes away. Former downhill mountain biker, she might have gained a couple of seconds on that corner. What will be intriguing is to see what happens in the battle behind. Do they maintain cohesion in the chase, or we still have stuck in the middle Hanselman potentially picking up that 2 second time bonus. 3 second time bonus and 20 points in the race for the points classification going to Brody Chapman. Here comes the peloton charging the right-hand turn, and they're about to catch the former Swiss national champion, Nicole Hasselmann.
What I think is also telling is that riders like Kirschman, Lotte Hantella, and also, of course, Chloe Hosking are really looking at these intermediate points. Brody hasn't won any other intermediate sprint points today, so while she did win 3 and 3-second bonus today, that's not going to make a significant impact unless she stays away. So they're absolutely annihilating this gap that she's accumulated, and it'll all come together at the finish.
It's down to 2 minutes and 6 seconds. The advantage for Brody Chapman. The red colours are Sunweb. Leah Kirschman, she might be keen on another 2-second time bonus.
I think it's a critical part of their strategy that they have absolutely marked from the first possible moment. They've said we're here to get the intermediate sprints. Challenge us if you like, but that's the strategy that they're sticking with. The gap's still out over 2 minutes. The crucial moment will be after that sprint. If I was a team director, I would be reminding them, eye on the prize. You're going for the finish, you have someone to chase. It's not get to that intermediate sprint, get your points, sit up, recover. Normally, without a breakaway, that's what they would do. They'd get through the sprint, they'd take a drink, they'd have something to eat, they'd drift back through the bunch, have a bit of recovery, and so that in the final 10 kilometres they can rally back to the front. They can't do that.
Here's the tight right-hand turn. It disrupts the cohesion at the front just a little bit. Settling back into their rhythm. The Tipco colours coming through towards the front. And Leah Kirschman in the red colours, she does want a piece of the action, going for just the 1-second time bonus. She crosses the line in second position from the peloton, third position in terms of the time bonuses. That gives her 6 seconds worth of time bonuses already.
Oh, very savvy riding. Interestingly, no Chloe Hosking. She has to focus on the finish now. It would be, not the smartest tactic to spend all her energy on an intermediate sprint with 15 kilometres to go. What we can note is Leah Kirschman will carry some fatigue into that final sprint because she has been so consistent through the intermediates, but that has a cost. And look at the bunch now. I mean, it's a beautiful teardrop. It's lovely to watch, but this isn't good chasing. The gap will go out a bit more from this, and then you're within the critical 10 kilometres left to go. At 10 seconds a kilometre, at 2 minutes, that's a risk.
Absolutely, and she's going to get more and more motivated with every kilometre. As she gets closer and closer, she would have now the team cars up behind her because of that gap. She's highly motivated. She would have people waiting for her at the finish line, and the team saying, this is your new team for 2020. There's a lot to be motivated for from Chapman's perspective.
This is a good moment for Brody Chapman. The peloton, they're fanned out across the road. Here is the leader on the road. She went through the intermediate sprint with slightly over a 2-minute advantage over the peloton. How do they get themselves reorganised for the chase?
I mean, this is a bit of a labour. Look, she's in a big gear and she's really slogging away quite consistently. But from the shot, we can see it's slightly uphill. Let's not call this a climb, but let's say that there is some altitude out there, the dead roads. These are not easy racing conditions, even though the weather is quite mild. But Brody, on her own, has the chance to get into a really smooth rhythm to temper her effort. And when you're within 10k to go, it's just all in. You break a race down into the chunks. With 50k to go, you can't afford to leave it all out there because you'll explode. With 10k to go, it's all in. You can afford to explode and still kind of crawl to the finish as much as you can. Huge opportunity. I'm quite excited to watch this. We did not anticipate a solo rider getting over 2 minutes clear coming into those final 10 kilometres.
1 minute and 48 seconds, 13 kilometres remaining. It's Ziptrack stage 1 of the Santos Women's Tour Down Under. The 5th edition of the race. Amanda Spratt is aiming for title number 4. She's won it for the past 3 years. Brody Chapman took out the points at the intermediate sprint, the third and final intermediate sprint in Echunga. Back in the peloton, Leah Kirschman, she was across the line in second position from the peloton, giving her third place another 1-second time bonus. This, seeing how quickly the advantage for Brody Chapman is crumbling underneath the chase, this could be touch and go on to a finish line.
But we also know how technical this finish is. It's different from the other times they've ridden through the area, and they will have to make, as you said, a tight left-hand turn and then 3 more left-hand turns. That plays in the favour of a single rider, definitely over a bunch where you would hope there isn't an incident.
They're not chasing hard at all. I mean, they're bunched up there across the road. You can even see from the body language of the riders that they're not working too hard. It is a slight incline here. You can tell from the riders at the back, that the pressure is definitely on. But this is not what I would call a concerted chase by any means. I really do wonder what the team directors are thinking. But a really important point, I think, Brody, is at this point in the race when the pressure is really on, the team directors cannot tell the athletes what to do. It needs to be intuitive. They need to talk amongst themselves and use their team leader out on course to really change the strategy. There'll be some teams who just thought it was going to be a sprint. So in their minds, all they have is protect our sprinter, get them to the finish in pretty good condition, and they might be a bit rattled by this and not quite sure what to do.
And they may not want to do the work. They might be teams, let's say with specialised women's racing, they have Matilda Reynolds, who's a great sprinter. Their riders could say, well, it's not our job to chase. Let's let these women who race in the UCI World Tour make the chase. Let the professional riders do that work, and we'll just see what we can get. You'll notice how much movement there is in the trees and across the grass. It is actually quite windy, and in that section of the climb they were riding into a headwind. That makes it more challenging, of course, for Brody on her own. She's got nowhere to get protection from the wind.
An update from the intermediate sprint in Achunga. Race Radio just saying that in fact it wasn't Leah Kirschman across the line in third position. It was Juliette Labous, one of her teammates, who is at number 13. And not a huge difference, just with a 1 second time bonus either way. But in terms of Leah saving her legs, tactically, it's significant.
Well, it is. It's significant. And what more is significant is that by sending another Sunwend rider up to take those points, it's showing that they don't want other riders to get them. So if Leah can't get them, they still don't want a Chloe Hosking or a Gracie Elvin to take it. The chase has heated up a bit. Canyon Schramm have been sent up. Jess Pratt on the front doing some pretty solid work. Canyon Schramm, I wouldn't have thought that it's necessarily their responsibility. They obviously, back themselves in a sprint finish. But here's Mitchelton Scott starting to take a bit of responsibility. One rider, is that enough? I mean, maybe send a few more up.
Is it one when it's Jessica Allen, or does she
That's
count
a 1.3.
Yeah, she kind of counts for a little bit extra.
She's been a junior time trial world champion. She's won the Australian Criterium Championships.
This is notable. The American national champion, Ruth Winder, is doing the chasing. She's a rider that I would have expected from Trek Segafredo to have a protected status, not for today, but for the overall classification.
And I think so, but I also think that Lotte Hentala has started so well today and shown that she's got pretty good legs. I would anticipate that their team director, Ina, has said to them, see how you feel, and if Lotte backs herself and says, yep, I've got good legs, ride for me, then that would be the tactic, which would change if she said, I feel rubbish today. But this would indicate, I'd say that Lotte's feeling pretty confident.
Now, with smaller teams, women often will have to just send one rider up, and so one rider from quite a few of these stronger teams are then saying, yes, we'll participate. We've got Jess Allen, we've got a Trek Segafredo rider who's a teammate of Lotte's, we've got a Canyon SRAM rider, they're probably riding for Alexis Ryan, the American, number 26. So each of these key teams have sent up one rider to really work on the next sort of 6 to 8 kilometres, particularly through these undulations.
Down to 1 minute and 8 seconds, the advantage for Brody Chapman as she makes the approach to Macclesfield for Ziptrack Stage 1 of the Santos Women's Tour Down Under. Well, 1:18 according to the board, 1:08 according to Race Radio. It is tumbling down. I think she's going to be caught.
Oh, I think she might be too, but I think
say that through gritted teeth.
We would love to see Brody win. I think the Couch Peloton would love to see Brody win. And, the cow's having a good old relax there. He looks like he's enjoying watching the bike racing go by. What's significant about Brody's move, even if she doesn't stay away, is that this race is not going to be a predictable ride in easy sprint finishes. And they know that now. That there's been enough attacks and enough aggression today that I think they'll have to regroup. Tonight, all of the teams will be considering what to do tomorrow in light of the fact that there's some teams who aren't prepared to just sit back and let it happen.
So Trek Segafredo are all in now. We've got 4 of their riders up here at the front sharing with 2 Canyon SRAM. Great to see Amanda Spratt sitting at about 10th wheel. She won't be there to try and lead anything out, but she absolutely wants to stay upright, not lose any time, and even hopefully get a few time bonuses depending on the placings.
Amanda Spratt, her legs are really strong, but her bike IQ is through the roof.
It's very, very smart, very savvy to sit in the top 10 or so. I mean, you've got to protect yourself. It's a general one, but I would say more crashes happen at the back, Brody, than at the front.
Well, it's a simple numbers game. The more riders in front of you, mathematically, the more chances there are of a rider crashing and you being caught up.
More wheels to hit,
and
right?
that impact
Correct.
of that sort of accordion, you brake, then the person behind you might accidentally brake, and then everyone's else strung out, and the pace changes, so it's a lot more unpredictable at the back. We've seen some very famous riders. Judith Arndt, the German world champion, she used to ride not just on the back but off the back. I think she might have been bored sometimes. She raced a lot.
Inside 1 minute, in fact, it's down to 47 seconds with just over 9 kilometres to go on stage one of the Santos Women's Tour Down Under.
Peloton needs to remain diligent. You know, I mean, they've done a great job to bring that gap back so far, but they can't afford to sit back and rest now.
Brody Chapman out in front. It almost appears as if this is no longer a chase of Brody Chapman, but a setting up of the stage finish.
Well, I think, you know, it's a mix of both. If they're confident that they will be able to bring it back, it won't so much be a chase. It'll be a getting ready for the finish, rallying the numbers. I think we'll see Team Somewhere come to the front soon, and I think they'll be in numbers. I don't think they'll send one rider up. It will be more of a case of the Red Army marching up the side of the bunch and protecting Leah Kirschman. She's clearly got great form and good legs, and she's got the confidence of the team. This is
Jessica Allen for the Mitchelton Scott team rolling through to the front. She's been
to prepare. You know, I mean, people talk about why the Aussies have an advantage, but the opportunity absolutely is there for the Europeans or Americans to come out a bit earlier to do some of the Australian Summer of Cycling and get prepped and ready.
And they're welcome.
No, yeah, they are welcome. No excuses. You know, if they say that the Aussies have an advantage because they've gotten to race, well, they can choose to race as well.
This is beginning to look very much like a fight for position within the peloton. You saw the orange colours of the rally team, the teammates of Chloe Hosking, trying to claw their way around the outside and get towards the front without being on the front.
Yes, near the front, not on the front. I used to say that to some of my over-enthusiastic teammates who, you know, just wanted to chase, and I'd say near the front, not on the front. There's two kind of different mindsets coming into this point in the race. There's some who just hate it. They feel the stress and anxiety of the finishing and everybody riding so close and so compact within the bunch. And then there's others who really relish it. You know, Chloe Hosking, she loves this point. She knows everybody else is way more stressed than her. This is her comfort zone, and she's being delivered by her team and by the other riders to a perfect finish, really. You're right, Keno. It's not about chasing Brody Chapman anymore. It's about preparing for that finish.
This is the fight for position. We are getting down to the business end of the stage. Just 7 kilometres to go as they head into Macclesfield for a first ever stage finish of the Santos Women's Tour Down Under. Brody, the final 1,300 metres are really technical, so having teammates around you will be crucial.
And these are the first UCI points of the season. There are a lot of women who want to be on that podium. They want to wear that ochre jersey. We know that the QOM Subaru jersey has already been allocated, but these riders are absolutely excited about this, and it's only been a short stage, so they're really, really motivated.
Kate, we can see the national champion of Australia really clearly, Amanda Spratt, but teammates scattered all over the peloton. It is hard to get organised.
Some teams prefer to be en masse. On the right of screen we see some, we've been waiting for this, we knew this would happen. They work together. They don't send one rider to follow another wheel. They believe in safety in numbers. That's a tactical thing. You know, it might be better for Amanda Spratt. She might feel more comfortable kind of looking after herself with some riders behind her, knowing where she is to help her out of trouble if she needs. Team Somewhere, well, they're a little bit different, and go Leah Kirschman. You know, I think it's to her advantage.
How heart-sinking is this? Brody Chapman, neutral service, that team car Or that vehicle has been called forward.
Look, she has put in a really great show and would have known that that was likely to happen with the number of teams who are motivated for a sprint finish. But this is not a negative outcome for Brody. She's gotten a couple of seconds with the time bonus. She's put the Française des Jeux jersey on screen, and she's also tested her legs out to see how she was feeling. I think it's been a really positive move. It's also probably something that will lift the spirits of that team. We talked about it earlier, but to have 3 teammates arriving really late last night, nowhere near prepared as they would have liked, not being able to build that rapport with their Australian teammates, and probably being a bit anxious about whether they'd make it or not. So it's actually a really wonderful outcome for Française des Jeux to have her out in this break. But what I'm really fascinated to see is how the peloton will navigate these twists and turns on the roads that they haven't had. You know, there will be some riders who have done recon, but no one's ridden through this today in the race.
So which team, Kate, takes full control in the final few kilometres to set up the sprint finish?
I think Sunweb, you know, I mean, they've proven all race that they are strength in numbers. We've seen that kind of Red Army march up time and time again, and I think that's their tactic. Rally UHC, they're down in numbers. They've only got 5 riders out there. I think Chloe Hosking suits better grabbing a wheel. They will deliver her to safety, but I don't think that we'll see a full lead out from Rally UHC. And quite often when you have one team that takes responsibility, the other teams let it happen. They go, okay, we'll let you do this and we'll find a safe wheel for our riders. You want to be in the top 10 with a kilometre to go, or I don't think you're even in contention. You know, and that's a really big deal. Then the race isn't just about the finish, it's about just getting them into the position. These are quite nice wide roads for the athletes to navigate, so it's not that they're on these tight little twisty lanes where they can only be 2 or 3 wide, but that means there's a lot of riders battling for that front position when they are 10 wide across the road, essentially just racing each other.
And the shoulder of the road is soft. There's some dirt that, you know, there's nowhere to go if you've rubbed off there. You know, you're going to lose 10, 15 places really quickly.
Ziptrack stage 1 of the women's Santos Tour Down Under. It's coming down to the final 5 kilometres. Brody Chapman is within sight of the peloton. At one point, she had an advantage of almost 3 minutes, and it looked like she might have been on target to cause the big upset. They've got her under control. The sprinters are beginning to lick their lips. The contenders for the final Orca jersey are making sure they keep themselves out of trouble.
Lauren Kitchen, she rides for FDJ. She's just seen her teammate make a mammoth effort and, you know, almost take the victory. She will get caught, but what an impressive ride from Brody Chapman. But Lauren Kitchen, she's in a plumb position. She is a great sprinter, a lot of experience, a lot of speed in the legs. I think she'll probably sneak into one of those Sunweb wheels. She could be quite disruptive.
Lauren had a small training crash just a week or so ago at the Bay Series along with Amanda Spratt, and she said afterwards, I hope I didn't break Spratty. They were riding as teammates there, they're rivals today, and it will be elbows out for Lauren Kitchen. She knows how to sprint.
It's like breaking your mum's good china. You just don't want to be the one that does that.
Well, Kitchen and Hosking are actually really good friends. They raced junior racing both on the track and on the road back in 2007, 2008, 2009. So they know each other really well. But we talk about rubbing elbows, and Chloe is absolutely the maestro at that. She's happy to bump in and off around people like a pinball and get herself into the best position. So I'm really excited to see how this pans out.
So look for the orange colours. That's the rally team, and they're the teammates of Chloe Hosking. She's the recently crowned Australian Criterium champion, and she won by a whisker ahead of Ruby Roseman Gannon, who is there in the peloton. We haven't mentioned her. She's in the Australian colours of Uni SA, and she, Kate Bates, is a chance.
Well, we haven't mentioned her because we haven't seen her. What a savvy ride from her. You know, to sit in there, protect herself, not waste any energy at all. She wouldn't necessarily be looking for the overall. She's quite young. To her, this is quite an intimidating race. But a stage that's certainly not out of her reach, and she would have gained a lot of confidence nearly beating Chloe Hosking. You know, sometimes that in itself is career defining. Nearly beating someone can turn your mindset around and give you confidence and say, wow, I thought I would be lengths off her. I'm millimetres off her. I can do this.
And the advantage that she has is no pressure. Grace Brown, number 6 at the back. That is a surprise.
Yeah, I would not expect to see her here. I think that now, whereas we're getting closer to 3 kilometres to go, she will be a rider useful for the lead out.
And on the left, number 63, that's Sarah Gigante. This is a technical finish. She could possibly lose a few seconds in the last couple of 100 metres with this technical approach to the finish.
You really have to be absolutely on the ball. These technical finishes, a lot of the riders are going to be incredibly nervous. For them, for Sarah Gigante, it's absolutely not about winning the stage. It's about not losing time. It's a very different mindset right now to what Chloe Hosking is in. And you have to consider all of these different elements in the bunch. There's not 20 riders who realistically think they can win. There's probably 5 at the most.
Off to the right-hand side of the road. There's been a fall in the middle of the peloton. Going down, that is Nicole Frayne is amongst them. Rock Salt Attacker also caught up in that fall. Brody Chapman inside 3 kilometres remaining. Somebody forgot to tell Brody that she's meant to be caught by this stage, but she doesn't own a white flag. She is not surrendering.
Great opportunity for her to just absolutely keep the hammer down and not think about the fact that she's going to get caught. You mentioned earlier, Kate, with a teammate like Lauren Kitchen, it's her job now, Brody's, to absolutely keep the pace as high as she can. She's not going to relinquish any of this lead while it's still, you know, with 2.5 to go.
And it's the teammates of Chloe Hosking doing the chasing in orange. Here's a look at the fall. There's a couple of riders on the right from FDJ trying to move up the right-hand side. They go off into the dirt. That causes a reaction within the peloton.
And it's not the riders who went off into the dirt that fell, but actually the ones in the middle. Nicole Frayne from Uni SA, that was a bit of a nasty fall for her. And Justine Barrow, I think it was the Rock Salt Attacker. Oh, gosh, they hit the ground hard, don't they? I mean, it's kind of cringeworthy. It is part of the sport, but sometimes it is a bit nasty to recover from those. The peloton, they are on a mission. But look at Brody Chapman. She's still out there. I mean, we do think she will get caught. We're inside the last 3 kilometres, and that is not a significant gap in that.
Another rider we haven't mentioned yet is Sierra of Astana, and she is strong and she is fast and she is a contender. 1,600 metres to go. Chapman is yet to be caught.
So we're coming up to these really tricky left-handers. They're going to sort of swerve slightly right up onto Todd Street and then left into Searle Street here in Macclesfield. So that's the area where it says caution on the race guide.
Elena Sierra, she finished her season with a win. She has come here seeking a win. She's motivated. She's said it. We haven't seen her all day because she's been protecting herself. Team Astana will deliver her to a wheel. I don't think we'll see a lead out from them. Brody Chapman being caught now, and they're starting this sharp left-hander. They're on the downhill run to the finish.
And they make plenty of left-hand turns in these last 1,300 metres. Chapman is about to be caught. Meanwhile, last year's Australian Road Champion Sarah Gigante is at the back of the peloton, and she is in danger of conceding a little bit of ground. The fight for position is on at the front. Chapman still has not been caught.
And the bunch is fracturing behind her. They're actually not getting any closer. Chapman out of her seat and accelerating. She's very good technically. She knows that if she can stay at the front through these corners, actually the advantage from the peloton is really diminished. Look at how small that chasing peloton is now. It is strung out. If the riders aren't in position now, well, they're out of luck because this is crunch time.
By her. Absolutely, you know, it's for her not to absolutely give up at all. And now we see with the 2 Sunweb riders on the right-hand side of that arrow and a rally rider on the left with a couple of Trek Segafredo behind them.
She's finally been caught. Chapman has been reeled back in. It is the peloton who will be sprinting for the honours of the Ziptrack Stage 1 in the Santos Women's Tour Down Under. Strung out in single file.
And it's Chloe Hosking in second wheel. She's on her own. We knew that she would grab a wheel and take every opportunity she had, but a whole mix-up through that last corner, a change in position. It's really strung out as they come into the final, led by Trek Segafredo. Chloe Hosking comfortably sitting in second.
Trek Segafredo with the lead out. Chloe Hosking in the orange colours. She's the pre-stage favourite. Not only is she opening up the gap for the stage win, but this might be a time gap for the overall race lead. Chloe Hosking collects in Macclesfield in emphatic fashion.
Absolutely outstanding timing by her. Just sitting in the wheel of the rider, probably Lorraine Tala. Just taking her opportunity with about 150 metres to go. Great win.
She was second with 500 metres to go. She had the perfect position. She just took that lead out from Trek Segafredo. That was not a small win. She didn't have to push for that. That was a romping victory from Chloe Hosking. She was confident. She said at the beginning, I can win this. Not I want to or I hope I can win this. And that is what confidence delivers.
Experience and composure. Chloe Hosking, she's always a great one to see immediately after the stage. It's now celebration time, but experience was the big factor there.
Great to have her team there, and as we said, she's just said, I'm so proud of you there, just slapping the backs of her amazing teammates, all only a team of 5 at this race, some of whom are quite young. So what an incredible way to start the season.
Here's another look at the finish, and Chloe Hosking, Kate, she timed this to perfection, particularly these final few corners.
Well, she was about 10 back in this position, but as they came up to Brody Chapman, who did a romping job to get out of the seat and keep chasing. In fact, she played a very critical part in that lead out because she made sure that the peloton had to continue keeping the pace up and they couldn't breathe for a single second. Chloe Hosking, we can barely see her in this shot. She's just tucked in between the Sunweb riders. We knew Sunweb would be active. She's just holding the wheel. She's not in the wind. She's not doing the job herself, but she's smart. She knew that this corner would change position. This pops her. What a perfect tactical ride. It's popped her into second wheel. Lotte Henthaler from Trek Segafredo taking the responsibility for the pace. You had to be in the top 10 at this point to even have a chance. And Chloe Hosking, she put herself in the perfect position. It's strung out. If you're 3rd, 4th, 5th back here, there's no way you can get to the front. Big gaps opened. Such a textbook slingshot, isn't it? We've seen so many riders leave that little gap and then use the slipstream to just accelerate past with all that incredible power that she has. She's incredibly low. The head's down, right down over the handlebars.
Henthaler it is in 2nd position on the stage, but what is notable is the gap between Chloe, then Henthaler, to 3rd place. Is that big enough to cause a small time gap?
That looks like Matilda Reynolds there in the Specialised, and then coming around the outside of her could be a national team rider. So we'll wait to see for confirmation of 3rd, but it could be Reynolds, who's been a fantastic performer on the domestic circuit. But you're right, Matt, definitely a time gap there.
Well, it's quite deceptive, the front shot versus the overhead shot. I don't actually think they will time gap that. I don't think it will be a full second. Matilda Reynolds getting 3rd, a national domestic team specialised women's racing, Black Sheep. What an incredible ride from them. I think that they've really stepped up and performed. But where was Leah Kirschman?
Well, she missed out. Chloe Hosking takes the stage win. It was Henthaler in 2nd position, and Reynolds is celebrating 3rd.
Brings the travellers back to the sideline. David McKenzie walking us through. Well, they come towards the line. Turns down.
it's a 4-day race. It's in its 4th year, 377 kilometres in total, based in Adelaide in South Australia. And the women's Santos Tour Down Under coursing through the vineyards of the Adelaide Hills here. And this is being opened up by Letizia Paternoster. This woman is only 19 years of age and she's done it to perfection. And so this second day from Rutpa to Mangala Hill. Amanda Spratt is the hot favourite, but today is the day she must produce the goods.
And Spratt's on the move. She's attacked, and the bunch, well, they're unable to respond.
And Lucy Kennedy here. She's expecting her team captain to come. She hasn't got to wait much longer now. Little look over the shoulder by Amanda Spratt, and she's well clear.
She's going for the stage win. She's going for the overall win.
With yesterday's leader nowhere to be seen, she's the next one in Oka. And they're on the way again. 84 riders still in the Santos Women's Tour Down Under as they roll away from there.
Grace Brown accelerating towards the line.
I tell you what, the strongest team in the race quite clearly now is Mitchelton Scott. Well, the River Torrens looks quite calm, but I'm sure the heartbeats aren't calm here for this final stage of the Women's Santos Tour Down Under.
The sprinter,
Here. That was a routine left-hander, but somebody's touched the wheel. Trek Segafredo trying to lead out Paternoster here as they continue to. It's Sarah Roy trying to get in on the act, but a big rush up on the outside here. This looks like a Barbieri who's coming through, but Chloe Hosking making a final run for the line and gets the win for the 2nd year in a row. And in the end, Amanda Spratt has won the Santos Tour Down Under for a 3rd year in succession.
That was the 2019 Santos Women's Tour Down Under as Amanda Spratt won it for the 3rd year, and the final stage that was taken out by Chloe Hosking, as the first stage this year has been won by Chloe, and she won it, Bridie, in emphatic fashion.
It was an incredible acceleration off the wheel of the Finn, and really emphatically took that victory and looked thrilled at the end with her new teammates as well. So a great start to the season for Rally.
Kate, can she win the race overall?
Absolutely. I think Chloe Hosking has come in as one of the race favourites, but what's defined her attitude is, I can win this. Not, I hope to win this, but she backs herself. Today she didn't win by a push of the bike. She won so emphatically that her confidence will grow even bigger again. She's come here with a reduced team. Normally there's 6, they've got 5. We think maybe that could be a disadvantage. I don't know that it is. You know, I think for Chloe to win a sprint, she doesn't need a big team lead out. She needs a good wheel. Her team did an incredible job of getting her into that top 10, and kind of, it's almost a pat on the back and over to you. And Chloe loves that responsibility. She loves the pressure of that. You know, I think winner, winner, chicken dinner stage 1, could be 2, could be 3, could be overall.
Well, let's hear from her now. Here she is, the winner of the stage, Chloe Hosking.
To win the first stage?
Oh, it feels great, and I'm trading one orange jersey for another now, so no, I'm super stoked. You know, it means a lot that the teams come over here to support me, and the girls were incredible today, so yeah, I'm really pleased that I can already give them back a UCI win, and a great start to the year for rally cycling.
And what were the conditions like out there today?
Pretty unpredictable. You know, the wind was coming, but we were changing direction so much. It was, you sort of just had to stay alert all day. Lovely and cool, so that's really nice, especially for the Euros. You know, it's not such a shock to the system for them.
And what were the team tactics for today?
Well, we were committed to the sprint for me, and I just asked the girls to keep me out of trouble leading into the last 15 kilometres and, you know, get me into this quite technical section with 1.5k to go at the front, and I knew I was going to use them early, so then I said I'd just jump trains, and that's exactly what we did. So we really executed the plan today, and as I said, I'm really proud of the girls.
Yeah, so the team's really helped you, so what do you want to say about them?
Well, obviously it's, you know, the first UCI win this year for rally cycling, so and it's my, you know, first year with the team, so I'm really stoked that I can already give them back a win, and looking forward to racing with them throughout the year.
And how are you feeling about tomorrow?
I take it day by day. So
Look, let me savour my victory.
Absolutely, congratulations.
Thank you.
Day by day, that's the only way she can take it. She swaps the orange jersey for an ochre jersey. It's Hosking at the top of the table. Hentala was in second position. Reynolds in third. Gracie Elvin in fourth. That was then Peter Mullins. Leah Kirschman in sixth position. So she's got herself off to a good start with the intermediate sprints at least, and some time bonuses for the general classification.
And significantly, no time gaps at the finish. So all riders on the same time, but our overall will not look the same as the stage because riders picked up a lot of intermediate sprints along the way, which will affect because there are time bonuses, which will get reflected in the overall. But what a great ride from the Australians. We've got 5 riders in the top 10, and with a huge international field, 94 riders, 21 different countries. That's pretty high calibre. I mean, go Aussie cycling, right?
General classification, Hosking leading by 4 seconds. It is then Lotta in second position at 4 seconds behind. Leah Kirschman is in third place at 6 seconds behind. It's then Matilda Reynolds, followed by Gracie Elvin. That is going to be a difficult margin to defend for Chloe with one teammate missing.
Well, what we know, though, is she can be opportunistic about any further time bonuses in sprint stages. There aren't as many 3 intermediate sprints, but what we're seeing now is some of these other riders that are coming to the fore. So there'll definitely be riders putting their hands up as we go along and determining how they're feeling. She's clearly feeling confident.
Let's take a look at the highlights of the stage. They put all the national champions onto the front of the grid. I like that at the start, including obviously the recently crowned Australian champion for the 3rd time, Amanda Spratt. The first intermediate sprint, we saw the clear intentions. Gracie Elvin picking up the points for Mitchelton Scott and Leah Kirschman for the Sunweb team. We then saw the first serious attack of the day before going on to the Subaru King of the Mountains point, where it was Van Witzenberg who collected the points, and she has the Subaru King of the Mountains jersey.
They were aggressive all day, this team, and kudos to them. A lot of Dutch riders have come out here not high on our radar, but here we are coming into now the second intermediate sprint. You can see a lot of those riders with intermediate points already organising. There's Kirschman, the Canadian, on the left-hand side of the screen, and Chloe Hosking moving up behind her, and the Ala Cipollini rider onto the right.
And Kate, those time bonuses have put Leah Kirschman into 3rd position overall, despite not finishing in the top 3 on the stage finish.
Well, the efforts have been rewarded, and the same goes for Brody Chapman. What a ride from her. Nicole Hanselman not able to match the speed and endurance that Brody Chapman put out there, and the guts she put into this ride. Really, really gutsy ride. A stage that nobody thought an individual rider would even have a chance at winning. She didn't just have a chance, she only got caught inside the final kilometre. She took those sprint points on the way with 15 kilometres left to go. That means that she is rewarded for her efforts on the GC table.
There was a fall in the peloton, 3 riders going down. Nicole Frame was amongst them. It looked like Justine Barrow also went down for the Rock Salt Attacker team. And as they were approaching the finish line in Macclesfield, Brody Chapman was still holding on to a lead that gave her just a little glimmer of hope.
Yeah, only 3 riders affected by this fall, which is great. But as we saw and we predicted with these corners, it was just going to space things out, and the position was absolutely vital coming into the final corner.
Positioning and timing to perfection from Chloe Hosking.
Lotta Hentala with an incredible kind of lead out for Chloe Hosking. She thought that she needed to go from the front to win, but Chloe took full advantage of that and accelerated like an absolute rocket for an emphatic victory on stage 1 of the Santos Women's Tour Down Under. Ziptrack stage 1, and Chloe Hosking, well, she takes the cake, and I think that she will lead into the next few stages with a heck of a lot of confidence. The whole team will be really buoyed by this, and they're the ones to beat.
Novatech Stage 2 will be more challenging for Chloe and her team, from Murray Bridge to Birdwood, and it is a stage that has more climbing than what they've seen today. In terms of her team and the fact that they're missing 1 rider, this is going to make it a real challenge for the rally squad, but Chloe is full of confidence. She's got her shoulders pinned back.
Well, let's say lumps and bumps. It's not a climber's course tomorrow, but it's not dead flat. Those lumps and bumps, especially on the dead roads, they do have an impact on your legs, and especially when we consider the intermediate sprints. It's a race within a race that could affect the race. There's a lot going on for these riders.
What are expectations tomorrow, Brody?
There's a couple of teams that didn't really show themselves today that will be wanting to put themselves on the map. They've got opportunities they need to take, and riders who really need to test to see how they're feeling.
Chloe Hosking is in the leader's jersey. Join us tomorrow for more from the 2020 Santos Women's Tour Down Under.